Alright, so I'm driving up to the cabin now, and I gotta say, this place is in the middle of fucking nowhere. I mean, I wanted a little peace and quiet, but this is really secluded. Might as well explain what I'm doing up here. My somewhat estranged Aunt Sydney, and I use that word lightly, has a cabin up in the Berkshire she said I could use. It's kind of weird that she's come out of the blue after all these years to say, hey, use my cabin in the middle of the forest, but you know what? Free accommodation in the beautiful wilderness of New England? I'll take it. Okay. After a nice long 4-hour drive, I finally made it, and it's actually not that bad. I thought it might be old and dumpy, but it seems pretty nice. Organized. I honestly like it. It's quaint, lived in. I can tell Auntie Sydney's been here. She loves her books. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be comfortable here for the next week. Oh my god. I just had the best ribeye steak, smothered in a beautiful red wine reduction, which I'm now washing down with the rest of the bottle. Somehow, this cabin looks even more beautiful at night. Must be that New England charm. Oh man. I hope I can get some work done here. I mean, that is the point after all. I just didn't think it would be this hard or be like this. I know it's early days, but if so many people already like what you do, then why is it so difficult the second time around? I don't know. I just hope being here, with no distractions, can get me back to making what the people want. And I don't know if recording all my thoughts is a stupid idea or not, but I've got none left, so I guess I'll try anything. Whatever. No matter how it goes, at least this place is beautiful. So I'm outside now, in the woods behind the cabin. There's a narrow walking trail back here, and I think it leads to a stream or something. Anyway, it's beautiful. The birds are out, the sun is shining. It's a great place to be. Yep. Got a nice little stream back here. Very peaceful. Yeah, peaceful. There's literally nobody here for Oh, shit. Oh my god. It's a deer. Or a buck, or whatever those ones with the huge antlers are. God, it's amazing. Why didn't I bring a camera? Idiot. God, he's so big. Just drinking water on the other side of the stream. I wonder how much water one of those things Whoa. Whoa, what's wrong? Something spooked him. He just looked up and ran off. I wonder what it... Oh, whoa. Whoa. What the fuck is that? Oh, shit. It's like a huge deer skull. God, it's big. The antlers are enormous, too. And the teeth. I don't know. They're weird. The whole thing is weird. It's almost like human. But it can't be. It's too big. And the antlers are actually attached. Jesus Christ. This thing's just sitting here on a log. I don't like this. I'm going back. So the sun went down around 20 minutes ago. It's dark now. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little less enthusiastic about spending the night here tonight. I can't stop thinking about that weird skull thing. I mean, it's probably nothing, but
it was just so strange. It looked like it came from an animal, but also not. I don't know. And it was just sitting there by the river, like someone placed it there. God, this is gonna drive me crazy. All I wanted to do was come here so I could write, without distractions, and I actually produce something good again. I can't believe I'm just sitting here worried about something so stupid. I don't even know what the hell I'm gonna write about. I don't understand. The first book wasn't this difficult. It was easy. Everything just came to me. People loved it too. I'm really fortunate to have had that kind of success on a first novel. I guess I just don't understand where the second one went so wrong. I put just as much time and effort into that one as the first, but nothing. Not even negative criticism, just nothing. It's like they didn't even read it. Now trying to write this third novel, I'm just afraid. I can't even get words on the page. I'm supposed to be good at this, you know? At least, I thought I was. Now it's like, was I just lucky the first time? Was I ever any good? Do I even deserve a career as a writer? Fuck. I'd do anything to make something great. That's all I wanted. To be great. It's about 10:30 in the morning now, and I've been up since 6. I have no idea what's come over me, but I don't know, I've just been writing non-stop. The second I woke up, I just put the pen on the paper, and I haven't stopped. I've never written like this ever in my life. The only reason why I'm not still doing it is because my hand hurts so much. But the ideas, they're just surging through my head. I can't get them all out. Truly, I've never felt like this before. But I'm gonna make something amazing. I can feel it.
I can't believe how much I've written today. I just don't understand where it all came from. I haven't been able to write a single thing for almost a year. And then today I crank out 50 plus pages out of nowhere? How? And it's not anything like the first 2 books. This one's different. It's about defiance. It's about identity. It's about redemption. It's about everything. I mean, it's still in its infancy, but I feel like this story has so much to say. I just gotta figure out how to say it. I also had to step out and watch the sunset. I didn't want to spend the entire day inside. It's too beautiful out here to not spend any time outside. The sun is just going down now. God, the colors are so beautiful. Backlighting the swaying trees. It looks amazing. I can see every leaf on every branch, dancing in front of majestic orange and purple hues. It's the kind of thing that makes you think, if there was a God in this world, this is totally his doing. It's like, whoa, what is that? One of the branches looks like it has an arm coming off of it. It does, with fingers and everything. It's just dangling there, moving with the wind. Hold on. I'm at the tree now. On the bottom branch is a wooden arm-like thing. It's hanging off. Let me just see if I... Yeah, let me just... oh, man. What the fuck? There's a perfect arm made out of, like, woven together vines and twigs or something. It is a perfect replica of an arm, though. All the way down to the palm and the fingers. This is so weird. What the hell is this doing here? I gotta take a closer look.
Man, this thing is weird. I don't know how they got these little twigs and stuff to stay together like this, but whoever made this knew exactly what they were doing. I feel like I should be creeped out, but I'm honestly more impressed than anything. I'm gonna keep it here tonight. This morning has been incredible. I woke up early again and started writing. I can't believe everything that's coming out of me. This story is just incredible. It's finally starting to take shape. I can actually see where it's going. Still needs a lot of work, but this is good. I'm taking a look at some of Aunt Sydney's books right now. I always knew she was kind of a hippie, but I had no idea she was into all this stuff. The Magus, Demonality, Incubi and Succubi, Pneumatologia, Occulta et Vera, I don't know. A lot of this stuff is in Latin, but I think it all has to do with, like, fucking witchcraft or something. Aunt Sydney was sort of kooky in her own special way, but I guess it's been such a long time. Who knows what she's been up to? Freaky.
I decided to take a short hike up this mountain before the sun goes down. There's a small trail back here that goes up to this little lookout. I feel like I've earned it after all the work I did. I'm just so relieved that I'm actually getting words on the page. Not just words, but really great writing. I don't want to get my hopes up too much, but I feel like this one's special. It's not like the other two. It's completely different. The first two books were fun, easy reads. This one's not. This one's tough. It's difficult. And also violent. I don't know where these ideas came from, but I have serious aspirations for this story. I don't want it to just sell. I want it to be talked about, discussed, studied. These last 2 days of writing have reminded me why I started doing this in the first place. When I wrote as a kid, I never thought about being rich or famous or any of that. I just wanted to be one of the greats, like Hemingway or Dickens. Maybe that's overly ambitious, but what the hell? Wow. There it is. That beautiful northeastern twilight. There's really nothing else like it. I should just live here. Why ever go back? I don't owe it to anyone. The real world doesn't give you experiences like this. It's all just preoccupied nonsense and dog shit anyway. Bet I wouldn't step in dog shit out here. I'd never have to worry about it. Not like in New York. There's dog shit everywhere. Half of those dogs eat better than people. Even if there was dog shit out here, this is where it belongs. I wouldn't mind seeing something like that out in the forest. No. No fucking way. You can't be serious. I don't believe this. There are 2 identical legs leaning up against this tree. They're made out of twigs, vines, and sticks, just like the arm I found yesterday. Yeah, They are exactly the same. Perfect proportions and everything. Who the hell made these? And what are they doing here? This feels stupid, but I gotta bring them back to the cabin.
Yeah, so these legs and the arm are exactly the same. They're all made from the same sticks and vines, like intertwined to hold them together. Like muscle fibers or something. It looks like they all belong to the same body, but the other parts are just missing. Man, this is so weird. It's about 7:30. I've written so much this morning. This story, it's becoming so chaotic, so sinister. I almost feel like it's not mine anymore. I've never written about anything so violent or sexual. It actually scares me, but I can't change it. Everything is where it must be, and I can't lie about it. It's amazing. It's unworldly. The only thing missing is the ending. It's meaningless without a proper ending. I'm sure it will come though. Alright, so I've been doing some snooping around the cabin, and I found some really strange stuff. There's these bottles with like weird colored liquid in them. There's also these tapes. Listen to this.
Only the one who assembles the effigy may make contact. Or
It's like
a suitable
instructions for summoning a spirit or something.
the summoning group.
Really fucking creepy.
Inductee
I wish I could call my Aunt Sydney and ask her about this stuff, but
and therefore
I have no idea how to contact her.
between their world.
I always knew she was kinda out there, but this is a whole nother level. Where the fuck did she get these anyway? They sound like they were taped in someone's living room or something. I'm sitting in the kitchen right now, and on the table in front of me is a torso made from the exact same materials as the legs and arm that are laying on the floor in the other room. What the fuck? I mean, I just went outside a few minutes ago to get some fresh air, maybe walk down by the stream, then all of a sudden it starts raining. So I'm like, shit, and I come back toward the house. Right as I'm approaching the back porch, I see this thing sticking halfway out from under it. I couldn't believe it at first, but now I'm realizing this is no accident. And all these body parts belong together. So really, the only thing that's on my mind is, where is the other arm? I've been writing even more tonight, and I'm having a hard time understanding where all this material is coming from. It's starting to feel like it's not even coming from me anymore. This story doesn't even read like fiction now. It seems to play like an epic or some kind of legendary narrative. Anyone who read my last 2 books would say I have no business writing something like this. But here I am. Here it is. I just have to figure out how it's supposed to end. It's all meaningless without a proper ending. I guess I'll just see what comes to me tomorrow. Still shitty outside today. No hope for being in nature. I probably should write, but I want to know what else Aunt Sydney has going on in here. After finding that torso under the porch, I have a weird feeling she has something to do with all the stuff I found. Looking around this place, it all seems a bit odd now. She's got all kinds of weird feathers on the walls. There's like random animal bones on the windowsills. What's this? Locked. I must go down to the basement. So I've been fiddling around with this door for the last hour or so, trying to get it open and see what's down there. No luck so far. I can't find a key anywhere either. I don't get who she's trying to keep out of here. Doesn't make much sense. Nothing seems to work. I guess, Whoops. Well, I might as well take a look now that the door's open. Oh, Jesus Christ, it stinks. Something definitely died down here. Oh my God, look at all these books. It's like a library down here. What's this? Oh man, everything's in Latin. What have you been studying, Aunt Sydney? Whoa, holy shit. These are weird. There's all these little wooden carvings of people on this workbench. These don't look like normal people, though. Their bodies have this weird texture carved into them. And their heads are skulls with antlers. Kind of like... Oh, fuck. Here it is. The other arm. I have to put it with the other parts. Yeah. They all go together. These were all one thing like this before. But what about the head? Fuck. I know what goes there. I'm back in the cabin, with all the parts of this thing put together. It's an effigy. It's amazing. Just looking at it now, it seems almost like this thing once had a life of its own. It's just like those little wooden figures downstairs. But why? What have you been up to, Aunt Sydney? I've been sitting here next to this thing all night, writing. The words just keep coming out, but I don't know how to finish it. It's like this story wants to end, but it can't stop itself from going and going. I've written more this week than I have in the last 3 years, but I just want it to be over. This book has to end the right way, though. Otherwise, it'll just be obscene and offensive. It needs the right ending so it can have meaning. This work is too good to be seen as vulgar nonsense. It's too important to not be understood. God damn it. I might be in way over my head with this one. I woke up this morning and came downstairs. The first thing I noticed was that the effigy I had left here on the floor last night is now gone. I'm honestly really freaked out about it because I have no idea where it went, and I'm starting to worry that I might not be the only one here. I'm also looking around right now and realizing my car keys are now gone too, so that's very concerning. I know I didn't misplace them or anything like that, and I definitely didn't move the effigy last night or this morning. So I'm just really worried because I don't know what's going on, and I'm not sure how I'm gonna get out of here and get back home. I don't know. I'll just keep looking around. I've been looking all over the cabin today, inside and out, and the effigy is nowhere to be found. Same with my keys. I'm really scared about all this because I think it means someone came in here last night and took those things. But I have no idea who could have done that since I haven't seen anyone and no one lives anywhere near here. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I mean, I suppose there's nothing I can do. I was going to head back tomorrow anyway. Maybe if I don't come home, my family or someone will come looking for me. I hope they come looking for me. I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to be at home. This whole situation just scares me. It's getting dark outside. And if I wasn't scared enough about being here, I am now. There's no way I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. I'm just going to stay by the fire and drink wine until the sun comes up. I can see a bonfire out in the woods, about 50 yards away from the house. I'm not sure, but it looks like there are people standing around it. I'm gonna get closer so I can see. The effigy. It's in front of the fire. Who are these people?
Jonathan!
What? Aunt Sydney?
Jonathan, we know you're here. Please come out.
Fuck. Oh, shit. Aunt Sydney!
Come here, Jonathan.
What's going on?
Don't worry. Just come here and look at him.
Aunt Sydney, I
Don't worry. Just look closely.
Is it you who has summoned me?
What? No.
It is you who needs me.
No. I don't...
Yes, it is you who wants me. You who desires my blessing.
No. I want to leave.
You want fame, no? To be coveted by the masses?
No, I don't think so.
Yes. You are a man of words. A writer.
How did you...
I know everything.
Who are you?
I have many names. Lust. King of Demons. Ashmodee. Asmodeus. I can make all of your wildest dreams come true.
You can?
Yes, I can make you rich, and I can make you more than that.
How?
Your can make it more than a book. I can make you more than a writer. I will make you legendary.
No. I don't need you.
Yes, you do. You need the ending. Without it, your book is filth, literary indecency.
I don't want you to finish my book.
Then leave. Go back to your life. Back to your fall from grace.
What will happen if you end my book?
First, wealth. Second, celebrity. Third, death. But you will live on. They will discuss you. They will study you. They will worship you.
What do you want?
Your soul. Sell it to me.
Okay.
Welcome back to BBC News. In the past half an hour, news has broken about the untimely death of author Jonathan Wrigley. The American author, best known for his novel Wind of the Twilight Forest, has been found dead at his estate just outside London. The details of his passing have not yet been made public. Coincidentally, his death falls on the 9th year anniversary of the novel's release. Wind of the Twilight Forest has been shrouded in controversy since its release 9 years ago, with some praising it as a literary masterpiece and others shunning it for its crude and insensitive themes. The novel itself is responsible for civil unrest, mass book burnings, and even the formation of fringe religious groups emerging in countries all over the world. With more on the story, we have our local correspondent on the scene, just outside the Wrigley estate.
The day started as the sun came up, like it always did for Benjamin. Early bird gets the worm, he told himself internally, as a source of motivation to get out of bed. He put on his slippers and went downstairs, brewed a pot of coffee, and sipped it while looking out the front window. The street was empty, as the rest of the world slept. Benjamin stared at the dormant homes and thought, how many of these suckers am I going to dupe today? In his home office, Benjamin planned his day. He made a call list, rehearsed his scripts, and practiced empathy in his voice. These aspects of his demeanor were crucial to his success. His attention to detail and ability to humanize himself were what gained people's trust, and it was this trust which Benjamin preyed on. He downed his cup of coffee, showered, got dressed into a fine tailored Italian suit, and backed out of the driveway to go to his office, the crunch of autumn leaves under his car tires as he did. Benjamin worked in finance, a buyer and seller of various stocks, and a wealth manager, whose job it was to invest other people's money wisely. As an intelligent person, Benjamin could do his job well enough within ethical standards, but as a confidence man, he could help himself to much more outside of these ethical guidelines. By gaining people's trust, he was able to make quote-unquote investments that just didn't really work out, lining his pockets directly with the mismanaged funds of these unsuspecting clients. Through these methods, Benjamin made a very lucrative business for himself and lived comfortably in a 5-bedroom house on the outskirts of Chicago. He returned home later that night after a long day of cold calling and hard-fought convincing among his current clients. All in all, he had wrangled a grand total of $2,681 from hopeful investors, most of which they would never see again. Not bad for a day's work, Benjamin thought to himself. Upon entering the house, he fixed himself a drink and sat down in the living room. The night was a peculiar time for Benjamin, as he never really knew what to do with himself. Too tired to work, yet too restless to sleep, he often sat, drank, and watched TV anxiously. Aside from his inability to relax, Benjamin also suffered from insomnia and terrible migraine headaches. One of these rampant headaches he could feel coming on now. He made his way over to the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet to reveal a pharmacy of barbiturates, benzos, and hypnotics. He popped a couple sleeping pills to hopefully knock himself out before the migraine fully kicked in. Throwing them back with a healthy gulp of scotch, Benjamin breathed a sigh of relief. What was that? Benjamin was positive he just heard footsteps upstairs. Rushing out of the bathroom and to the staircase, he went up. Peering down the dark corridor, he said, "Hello?" But there was no response. "If anyone is in here, show yourself now, and I won't get the police involved." Still, no response. Benjamin walked through the corridor and checked each room one by one to find them empty and void of any intruders. When he got to his bedroom, a wave of drowsiness crashed over him as he collapsed into bed and slept heavily until sunrise. A new day arose, and so did Benjamin, feeling well-rested and eager at the opportunity to make money. He went through his morning routine and organized his call list. Benjamin was very good at his scam artistry because he was quite crafty and knew how to play the long game. He learned his clients well and fully understood their financial situations before hitting them for big money. One sector in which he had great success was with retired men. Old, unfit to work, and sitting on a lot of cash. These men often had a similar trait: the longing for competition. A lot of men at this stage in life refuse to just lay down and disappear. Many of them, especially the ones who occupied upper management or authority positions, truly missed the spirit of competition and the ability to earn financially. Naturally, with so much free time and an excess of money, many older, retired men are drawn to investing. This is where Benjamin thrived. Of course, with a reputation to uphold, Benjamin did not simply take people's money right away. He gained their trust by making a series of successful investments and periodically urging them to invest more capital for higher returns. Oftentimes, people did this, knowing Benjamin was good at his job. What they didn't know was his skills would ultimately work in his own favor. One way Benjamin siphoned money from investors was through the use of elaborate Ponzi schemes. Internal lines of credit were used to pay off certain investors, while others were left out to dry. Another method of Benjamin's, and his personal favorite, was stock inflation, or insider trading. With the help of wealthy associates in New York and the West Coast, Benjamin and others pooled their money to buy stock in mid-level businesses. This would inflate the share value of these businesses, which Benjamin would convince his clients to buy. Once the stock was at peak value, Benjamin and the others would sell, leaving those on the outside stuck with the devalued shares. Unknowingly, Benjamin was a modern pioneer of this financial scam, which would later come to be known as pump and dump stock schemes. In the future, others too greedy to keep their operations small would find themselves in hot water for this exact practice. Back at the house, Benjamin relaxed with a tall glass of scotch, or at least tried to. Most nights were like this, alone at home, waiting for the next day to start. Work was his livelihood, and all of the time spent not working felt pointless. Part of Benjamin longed for someone to share his home with, but the other part of him was happy to have it all to himself. Benjamin knew all too well the potential pain that came with sharing things, like your home, your money, or your heart. Benjamin was married once, a long time ago, 13 years to be exact. When he was in his late 30s, Benjamin met a woman named Maria. They met at a traders' conference in the city, and the first thing Benjamin thought when he saw her was that she was beautiful. Painfully beautiful. When Benjamin first approached her, she didn't seem interested. He figured his efforts were pointless when he saw the diamond ring on her finger and found out she was engaged to a man he knew of working at a competing firm. However, Maria really started warming up to Benjamin when he told her about his job and a recent yachting trip he took in Italy with some friends. The attention she gave him was intoxicating, and all Benjamin wanted from her was more. In the months following, they communicated in secret. They snuck around on private weekend getaways and camouflaged their affair in a mist of luxury. All the while, Benjamin spoiled her with clothes, jewelry, and basically anything that would spark her attraction. Eventually, Benjamin convinced Maria to break off her engagement and agree to marry him. When she did this, Benjamin felt as if he had conquered the world. Now, things were different. Benjamin ruled only a nation of one, as a splitting headache began ripping into his temple. With that, a few pills were thrown down the hatch as Benjamin made his way to bed. In bed, he thought about the next day's doings and closed his eyes. Benjamin jolted up, grabbed his pistol from the bedside table, and went into the hallway. To his confusion, there was no one in any of the rooms, and all of the windows were closed. He dragged his feet back to bed and fell flat onto the mattress. Awoken by the morning paper, Benjamin walked downstairs, still drowsy from the night before. In the paper, he was shocked to see an article on the former chief of Chicago PD. He had been found dead in his home, with a fatal gunshot wound to the head. It seemed that this action had been committed by his own hand, as a note had been found with the body. This fact made Benjamin feel uneasy, because the former chief had also been a former client. Just last year, Benjamin had cheated him out of $120,000 on a bad investment, pretty much ruining his entire retirement fund. Initially, guilt flooded Benjamin's psyche, but was swiftly combated by logic. Losing money is just a part of investing. It happens to everyone. Some people lose even more money than $120,000. To be that harsh on yourself is one's own choice. Benjamin folded the paper and proceeded with his day. Phone calls, schmoozing, and embodying the reliable nature of a friend. Playing the game was exhausting, and it always required a little upfront. In the beginning of all Benjamin's client relationships, he always let them make a few smart investments. He always made sure money was entering their bank account before proposing more lucrative investments. On this day, he deposited $528 into an old woman's bank account and $672 into a father of fours. Money like this was a big deal to people with families and responsibilities, but to Benjamin, it didn't matter. He'd get it all back in the end anyway. Family life was something Benjamin sought after at one point. Unfortunately for him, the honeymoon ended when he got married. Maria expected the same lavish treatment from Benjamin now having married him, if not more than before. Benjamin soon realized the constant gift-giving, spend-thrifting, and jet-setting was completely unsustainable. In response, he put limits on Maria's allowance, which she did not like. She soon turned cold, and the intoxicating attention she once gave him was now a thing of the past. Within the first year of their marriage, Maria filed for divorce. With no prenuptial agreement, this process absolutely drained Benjamin financially. In the end, she was gone, and he was left to rebuild from the ground up. Now, Benjamin was in a better place, as 3 sleeping pills entered his mouth. Waiting for the effects to kick in, he sat watching The Late Show as his eyes got heavier and heavier. Benjamin awoke suddenly to find he had dozed off on the sofa. It was 3 a.m, and someone was in the house. Creeping up the stairs, he heard them in the guest bedroom. They sounded like children, but what would children be doing here? Benjamin put his hand on the doorknob and flung the door open, but no one. Benjamin fell back in shock. Where are you? Leave! You're not welcome here. Footsteps trampled down the staircase, and Benjamin got up to follow them. He couldn't see who was there, but one thing was for sure. He was not alone. In the darkness of the living room, he wandered, looking for the intruder, but silence was all he found. Fear gripped Benjamin tightly while he gasped for breath. Something was wrong, but he didn't know what. Fumbling up the stairs, he made it to the bedroom and propped a chair against the door. The tiredness was too much for him, and he was out before his face hit the pillow. The next day, things felt much calmer. Benjamin equated last night's events to some kind of intense night terror, a negative side effect of the sleeping pills. Chalking it up to that made him feel better and allowed him to move on with his day. The morning paper arrived, bearing bad news. Stocks were down, unemployment was up, and it seemed the country was going through a bit of a recession. Not to worry, Benjamin thought. These things happen all the time, and the smart ones make it out just fine. Years of inflation due to unforeseen global events forced the Federal Reserve to implement tightening policies, but it was the general population who ultimately paid the price. The only thing that concerned Benjamin was how all this would affect his business. Although the faltering economy scared most out of investing, it also forced some into acts of desperation. And it was these people who Benjamin needed to pursue. In the following weeks, he went after desperate investors, often small business owners with their backs against the wall. Part of Benjamin felt bad about involving these people in predatory investing, but with the recession, the banks were going to reclaim all of their assets anyway. Why shouldn't I get a piece of the pie, Benjamin thought. It wasn't long into the recession that many of Benjamin's less wealthy clients started going bankrupt. They lost their homes, businesses, and in some cases, custody of their children. Benjamin sat at home and felt grateful that he didn't have any children, even though at one point he wanted them. After the divorce with Maria, he never resettled, never found another partner. To make matters worse, Maria went back to her former fiancé, the man she left for Benjamin. This struck Benjamin's heart like a serrated knife. All the satisfaction and prowess he felt from taking her away came tumbling back on top of him tenfold. All these horrendous feelings festered and grew into resentment, not just toward Maria, but toward all women. And not just toward all women, but toward all people. Since this seismic event, Benjamin shut himself off from the world and only focused on work. The lack of responsibility and emotional attachment gave him comfort, but this comfort was also accompanied by a sense of dreadful loneliness. At times, Benjamin wished he didn't have to be so alone, and it was times like these when... There it was again, the presence of an intruder. It was in the kitchen this time, and Benjamin could hear them moving about. He quietly crept upstairs to retrieve his gun and came back down to confront whoever was in the kitchen. Gun drawn, Benjamin turned the corner to find an open window with a heavy draft blowing through. The pantry door blew open and shut from the wind as Benjamin leaned over to shut the window. Just as he did, a wine glass flung itself off the counter, across the room, and into a wall. Benjamin grabbed his gun and said, "Who are you? What do you want?" The cabinets and glasses slowly started shaking, as if the house itself was bubbling with anger. "Leave me alone," Benjamin pleaded. A searing pain began pushing itself into the side of Benjamin's head. He stumbled clumsily over to the bathroom, desperate to reach his medicine cabinet. Through the hallway, he heard the disembodied voices of men, women, and children, seemingly coming out of the walls themselves. He reached the cabinet and grabbed the first bottle he saw and threw a small handful of pills into his mouth. The home's rampage continued, with windows and doors violently opening and closing. Voices surrounded Benjamin, as if to scold him and torment him. He fell harshly on the floor of his bedroom and begged, "Please leave me alone. Please let me be." But they did not, and Benjamin spent the rest of the night curled up on the floor like a baby, marinating in the terror of what felt like his life. He awoke early the next morning, still on the floor. Benjamin knew the events of the previous night were no dream. He went downstairs to find his home a wreck. Partially opened windows, smashed glass all over the kitchen. Too shaken to go to work, he spent the day cleaning up and medicating his still throbbing headache. In the newspaper and on television, things were getting worse. The economy continued to suffer, and crime was going up. Many people were unable to pay their mortgages and getting evicted. Benjamin even saw the father of 4 he had recently paid out in the newspaper, arrested for robbing a liquor store with a gun. Although Benjamin could not take responsibility, he felt connected to the man and all the others he had inadvertently put into compromising positions. Benjamin popped a few Valium and poured a glass of whiskey. He understood what was happening to him now. The negative energy which he had cast onto others for his own financial gain was coming back to torment him, coming back to make him feel what others on the outside were going through. In a mild panic, Benjamin paced around, unsure if he could face the truth. With no relief from the pain in his head, he swallowed more pills, now at random, hoping they would do something to alleviate the terrible sensation. Darkness slowly descended on the quiet neighborhood street as Benjamin looked nervously out the front window. The orange twilight sky looked back at him sympathetically, as if it knew what he was about to endure. Benjamin sat down, with cold, clammy droplets of sweat forming on his head. The sun set, encapsulating the home in darkness. Benjamin sipped and waited for something to happen. "You are not alone," Benjamin thought to himself. Footsteps pounded through the house, and a disturbance was felt in the kitchen. Benjamin walked over to find the room drenched in anger. The window flung open, and a glass flew across the table and smashed against the wall. Footsteps above his head suggested a presence upstairs. On the second floor, Benjamin felt an unbearable sadness, a childlike fear, and feeling of dread or hopelessness. The walls trembled, and Benjamin's head began pounding. He dropped to his knees and wept. "What do you want from me? What do you want?" In a desperate attempt to seek comfort, Benjamin crawled to the telephone, yearning to hear another human voice. Not knowing who to call, he dialed the only number that came to mind, his boss.
Who the hell is this?
It's Benjamin.
Benny. Do you know what time it is? What do you want?
I'm scared. I don't know what to do. They won't.
Oh, Jesus. Look, we're all scared, okay? You're clearly not well. Benny, get some rest. Take a week off. Take a month off. I don't give a fuck. Just don't call me this late ever again. Got that?
But
Good night.
And with that, Benjamin was left to fend for himself. On the floor, he lay in agony, thinking of all the people he had harmed in his life. Unable to take the pain, he screamed once more. "What do you want?" What do you want? It suddenly occurred to him what must be done. Throughout his life, Benjamin had gained so much from what others had lost, and in order to even the scales, he had to give it all back. He went to the garage, grabbed a canister of gasoline, and proceeded to douse his home in it. From outside, he struck a match and tossed it through an open window. In the driveway, Benjamin watched as his house became engulfed in flames. So much of what he worked for, burning away before his very eyes. An extreme weight was suddenly lifted from his chest, and his head slowly stopped throbbing. Now, it was time for the ultimate gesture. Benjamin walked calmly toward the front door, opened it, and stepped inside. Crackling from the inferno rang down the long residential street, and peace found a home in Benjamin once more. Meanwhile, in the present day, flames raged on the first floor of a 5-bedroom house on the outskirts of Chicago. A father of 4 hugged his family tightly in the driveway as firefighters extinguished the blazing house fire from outside. Shockingly, the cause of this house fire, which so suddenly erupted in the middle of the night, was never found. Just another unexplained event which took place in this mysterious home. For months, strange occurrences were witnessed by this humble family who had moved into the house less than a year before the fire. Slow, creaky footsteps on the staircase, doors and windows opening and closing on their own accord, and the voice of an unseen man manifesting in the upstairs corridor and master bedroom. Happenings like this shed light on the low price tag of this big, beautiful home, which had switched ownership frequently over the past 40 years. In this most recent passing of the keys, it was conveniently left undiscussed that the house had experienced a fire back in 1982. The owner at that time, a man named Benjamin Wagner, was a stockbroker and financial fraudster. He had amassed a great deal of money by cheating it out of unknowledgeable investors. He also had developed a heavy addiction to alcohol and pharmaceutical medications, originally prescribed to him for insomnia and headaches. One night, he arose from bed in a trance-like state, sleepwalking through the house. For reasons unknown, he doused his home in gasoline and burnt it all up with himself inside. Benjamin died with no family, no friends, and a lot of heavy-hearted regret. As the flames died down, the father of 4 made plans to pass the keys again, as he held his family close and told them he loved them. The day started as the sun came up, like it always did for Benjamin. Early bird gets the worm, he told himself internally.
Wind and sun blessed the top of Lake Menominee, while herons gracefully traced the water's edge in search of fish. All along the lake were cottages and houses, occupying every inch of shoreline, beautiful in appearance and upkeep. Each house had a small dock with a motorboat, some with jet skis, sailboats, canoes, and kayaks. The people who spent time in these houses enjoyed the lake in all its natural beauty, as the summer sun set on this gorgeous New England gem. Early the next morning, a car pulled up to one of the houses, carrying the Williams family, Mom, Dad, and Michael. At their lake house, they enjoyed the water, the sun, the trees, and the fresh air too, along with good food, yard games, and all the water sports toys available for play. Although the Williams had everything necessary to fulfill their human wants and needs, Michael was often quite lonely. He treaded the water alone in his tiny sailboat and watched other kids run, swim, and play games along the shore. He wasn't different than the other kids, but he wasn't like them either. Michael had a bit of a hard time making friends, which was mainly the reason why he didn't have any. At a mere 10 years of age, loneliness was an emotion he had grown to know a bit too well. Late one night, Michael lay in bed with his eyes closed and wide awake. He listened to the sounds of the night. Crickets chirping, birds crooning to one another across the water, and the gentle breeze as it brushed up against the leaves. Among these noises, he heard one that was not so familiar. Water, as it moved unnaturally against the shore. It sounded as if someone or something were wading in it. Michael opened his eyes and looked out of his bedroom window, shocked with what he saw. At the edge of the water, pressed against the moonlight's reflection, was the silhouette of a small boy. Frightened, but wildly intrigued, he slowly opened the window and crawled out the other side to approach the boy in the water. The boy noticed Michael immediately and raised his hand calmly to say hello. Michael walked right up to him and said, "What are you doing?" "I don't know," replied the boy. His hair was soaking wet, skin pale, and lips purple, as he stood shivering in the dark of night, wearing nothing but a bathing suit. "Do you want a jacket?" asked Michael. "You look cold." "I'm always cold," said the boy. "Warm clothes won't help." "Well, where do you live?" Michael inquired. "Here," the boy said. "You mean in Loon Bay?" "No." "Oh, so out by Oak Island?" "No." "So you must live in the Narrows then?" "No." "I don't get it. Where do you live?" "Here, in the lake." The boy then turned around and began walking into the water. He walked into his knees, then up to his waist, and up to his shoulders, until there was just a little head bobbing silently in the moonlight. In an instant, the head disappeared under the water, and Michael was left standing on the shore, as if he had been stood there alone the whole time. The next morning, Michael awoke wondering if what he experienced was all a dream. The memory was fresh in his head, but it seemed so surreal that it couldn't have really happened, he thought. In the afternoon, he sailed the water in his tiny boat, observing the lake and everything in it. The eelgrass swaying gently beneath the water's surface, loons flying silently overhead, and the adults slowly treading the water in their boats, drinking and partying under the warm summer sun. Across the water from Michael's house, a small group of boys played football on the grass of the house opposite. They ran and yelled frantically, playing their game without a care in the world. Their friendship and camaraderie fascinated Michael deeply, for it was something he had never experienced personally, and longed for wholesomely. He was then reminded of the previous summer, when, in an attempt to befriend the boys, he floated over in his kayak and asked to play with them. They said he could, but only if he could swim under the water and retrieve a stone from the bottom of the lake. Their menacing grins made Michael feel uneasy, but he was so desperate to make friends that he decided to give it a try. He took a deep breath and dove under the water. He kicked and reached helplessly with his hand, but felt nothing as he rushed back to the surface and gasped foolishly for air. The others laughed, and one said, "Wow, you were so close. Try it again." Michael took another deep breath and went back under, this time kicking harder and reaching even further. On the tips of his fingers, he could feel blades of grass and sediment of the lake floor, but not before running out of air and having to return to the surface for another ungracious breath. Again, the boys laughed wildly, and the same one said, "One more try. You're so close." In a final attempt at earning the boys' respect, Michael dove back down, kicked, and reached with all his might. He reached past the pond grass and into the mud, where he felt the jagged edge of a rock brush against his fingertip. Grabbing a handful of whatever he could, Michael shot up to the surface with his fist above his head. "I got it," he proclaimed, and opened up his fist to reveal nothing but blades of pond grass and mud. The boys erupted into hysterical laughter, and humiliation entered Michael's heart. "Come back tomorrow and you can try again," said the first boy. "Wow, what a loser," muttered another. Michael even caught a glimpse of the boy's father standing on the back porch, chuckling to himself after witnessing the ordeal as he sipped a cold beer. Michael climbed back into his kayak and slowly paddled over to his side of the lake. That was a year ago, and still he kept his distance. Night fell, and Michael lay awake in his bed yet again, indulging in his lonesome thoughts, along with the sounds of nature. Again, that irregular splashing. Was it the strange boy from before? Michael looked out the window and found that it was. He quietly crawled out and walked up to him. "Hey, I never asked you your name." "It's Edward." "My name's Eddie." "Hi, Eddie." "My name's Michael." "You have a nice house, Michael." "I wish I lived in a house like that." "You must have a lot of friends, too." No, not really. Other kids don't like to play with me that much." "Huh, that's funny. Why not?" "I don't know. Probably because they think I'm weird." "Well, I don't think you're weird. I think you're pretty swell." "Thanks," Michael said bashfully. He had never been given such a compliment before. "What about you? Who are your friends?" "Oh, I don't know. A bunch of kids from around the lake. Sometimes I'm not really sure if they're my friends or not." "What makes you say that?" asked Michael. "It's like sometimes they're nice to me, and sometimes they're not. They like to make me do things I don't want to do." "Like what?" One time they made me climb a tree to knock down a beehive because they said there was honey in it. Another time they shot Roman candles at me to see if it would hurt when they hit me. Why did you let them do that? I don't know. I just wanted them to be my friends. The worst was when they threw a baseball out into the middle of the lake and told me to go get it. But first they blindfolded me and spun me around a bunch of times before they pushed me into the water. They were all laughing, but I was scared. Did you swim back to the shore? No. I wanted to get the baseball, so I swam out to the middle of the lake. Only thing is, when I got there, I was so tired I couldn't swim anymore. I tried to make it back, but the water kept going in my mouth and in my nose. Soon I couldn't breathe and I went under. This is where I've been ever since. It's not very fun here. I'm sorry to hear that, Eddie. Your friends don't sound very nice. Most of them are pretty nice, just not the Van Beeks. Those two really weren't nice to me. The Van Beeks? Michael questioned. They live in that house right there on the other side of the lake. Do you know them? Eddie asked. Kinda. I know that Rob Van Beek lives there. He's our age. What about Philip Van Beek? Does he live there too? No, I don't think so. How about George Van Beek? He must still live there. Yeah, he does. That's Rob's dad. Eddie's eyes grew large and wide. Michael didn't know the significance of George and Rob Van Beek, or what it meant to Eddie. All he knew was that it meant something, and Eddie was thinking about it seriously. I better go, said Eddie. See you later, said Michael. Though little did he know, that was the last time he would speak to Eddie ever again, as he disappeared slowly into the water. The next day was their last on the lake. Michael's mom and dad had packed up all their things and were ready to leave in the afternoon. Michael sat on the dock and watched Rob Van Beek and the boys play football on the other side of the water. One boy threw a laser of a pass through Rob's hands, and the ball skipped across the water toward the middle of the lake. Just then, a large gust of wind blew from the shore and pushed the ball even closer to the middle. The boys spotted Michael sitting on the dock and yelled to him from the other side. "Hey, weird kid, paddle to the middle and get us our football, would you?" Michael sat frozen, reminded of the humiliation he felt the last time those boys asked him to do something. "Hello, we're talking to you," said Rob. "Forget it. I'll just get the ball. That creepy little weirdo's useless," Rob said again. He began swimming toward the ball. Michael watched on and expected more insulting words from Rob once he was close enough. When he was about 15 feet away from the ball, Michael noticed 4 pale fingers breach the surface and give the ball a gentle nudge. Michael stood up, filled with fright at the thought that something horrible was about to happen. He opened his mouth to warn Rob in the water, but nothing came out as he looked on in terror. Rob neared the ball and glanced at Michael on the dock with a disgusted expression. Just as he reached out for the ball, his arm and head disappeared under the water, as if he were yanked fiercely by something beneath. A moment later, he popped back up, flailing frantically and gasping for air. He kicked and splashed and shouted in fear. "Let go!" he yelled desperately, before being pulled under again. with silence ringing painfully into the ears of those who witnessed the apparent struggle. A moment passed and the silence continued. Another moment passed, and the absence of noise grew louder. Michael and the boys across the lake waited anxiously, eagerly anticipating Rob to explode through the surface and swim to safety. But he never did. Each second that passed without a sign of life made everyone fear the worst, until the boys on the other side of the lake panicked and ran inside to get help. Michael stood paralyzed on the dock, unable to close his mouth or blink as he stared intensely at the water and the football floating calmly upon it. Rob's father ran outside and jumped into his boat to go to the spot where Rob was last seen. It was then Michael's concentration broke, and he ran inside to watch from the window. Rob's father, George, had no luck finding his son in the water, as he scanned the area desperately, yelling Rob's name as he did so. Michael listened to the yelling from inside his house, confident that wherever Rob was, he could not hear his father's shouts. A dive team was soon brought in to look for Rob. They searched for hours, until finally, they found his body anchored to the bottom of the lake, held in place by pond grass, tied tightly around his ankles. Not only was the weak grass strangely enough to keep the young, healthy boy submerged in place, but the area where they located his body was a considerable distance from where he was last seen. Nearby Rob's sunken body were the bones of another small person. These bones were later found to be the remains of an Edward McMillan, Eddie, as he was known by his family and friends. Eddie went missing in the summer of '81 and was thought to be a victim of child abduction due to the lack of evidence and testimony pertaining to his whereabouts. Rob's father, George, cried with the pain of two broken hearts. He had not only lost a child, but took on the emotional burden of losing someone else's, a burden long overdue for George and the others. Michael and his parents drove home after seeing the young boy being pulled out of the water. The drive back was quiet. It always was, but this time the silence was different, eerily so. In the following months, Michael thought often of Eddie. He thought about why he was out there in the lake, and how Eddie must have known loneliness in a way us living people simply could not fathom. Michael never spoke a word of his midnight encounters with Eddie to anyone. Not because he didn't want to, but because those moments were held in a sacred place for kindred spirits. Maybe they just weren't for anyone else to know. As time passed, Michael thought less and less about Eddie. Summer after summer, Michael and his parents went to their house on Lake Menominee. He never saw the Van Beeks or any of the kids who played near their house. In fact, he barely saw any kids at all. He just sailed in his tiny boat, sat on the log in his backyard, and lay awake late into the night from the comfort of his bedroom. Eventually, Michael had children of his own, who he brought to the lake house in the summer. But no matter how much time passed, Michael never completely forgot about the boy who lived in the lake.
Ever since I was a child, I felt a strong connection to the forest. Not the mountains, or the ocean, or even nature in general, but the forest. Wind flowing through a vast sea of pine bristles appeared to speak my name in the form of an endless whisper. It always called to keep me near, keep my attention, and hold my heart. I love the forest, and I know, with the conviction of God Himself, that the forest loved me. It always has. Growing up on a small ranch in Montana, there wasn't much. Just me, my mom and dad, the animals, and a big green field surrounding our tiny house. At the edge of the field stood a dense tree line of tall, thick, ponderosa pines. At this very defined boundary was where our world ended and its began. I loved being in there, among the trees, the rocks, the dirt. Even when I went to sleep at night, I dreamed about being back in the forest. It was the only place I felt comfortable, the only place I felt safe. Living on a ranch isn't exactly easy. It's hard work. You gotta get up early in the morning, feed the sheep, feed the chickens, milk the cows. And with my dad being the man he was, if you didn't give it everything you got, he'd get angry. I mean real angry. And he'd show you how angry. The only way he knew how. Like I said, it's hard work. But we coped. My mom was the exact opposite. She was practically an angel. That woman had the patience of a saint. And I don't know how she put up with my dad for all those years. But she did. And I guess that makes her a lot better than me. One year, when I was about 12, my dad found a patch of baby spruce trees not far beyond the tree line. I always knew it was there, but never thought anything of it. As soon as he found it, he had the idea of cutting them down and selling them as Christmas trees during the holidays. I didn't want him to, and I didn't want to help. But what could I do? What he said went. It was September when he found them, and he planned to cut them down in the beginning of December. Those 3 months leading up to the holidays was one of the most agonizing times of my life, because not only did I know what he was going to do, but the forest knew. Right after he told me his plan, the forest stopped calling my name. Cold winds blew against me whenever I approached the tree line, and my nights were full of darkness and sorrow. I tried to dream about being under the tall pines, embraced by their safety, but I was banished, not only from entering physically, but even from entering in my own mind. The cold silence emanating from beyond the tree line was unbearable, and I was willing to do anything to make it right. December finally came, and my dad and I went out to chop down the baby spruces. The shame I felt, hacking away at each and every one of those trees, was almost too much to handle. I apologized again and again, while tears streamed down my face. But I was only met with silence, and that's what hurt the most. My dad sold the trees, and was a really happy man that Christmas. He drank a lot that year, way more than usual, and became jollier than he ever had been. The thing is, with my dad, happiness wasn't an emotion shared. The happiness was all his. Even if he thought he was sharing it with you, he wasn't. That Christmas, he got me a brand new axe with my name engraved on the handle. Maybe he thought it was something I'd use in the future. Either way, I didn't like it. I went to sleep crying each night after that Christmas. I wanted to return to the place where I felt most at home. But there was still silence. No wind, no whispers, no dreams, nothing. Until one night, the forest spoke to me again. After all this time, it spoke. In my dream, I was beckoned to the tree line in the dead of night. Cool breeze blowing gently on my back, coercing me into the darkness of the wood. I stepped in to find the pitch black, not dark at all. The forest held its own kind of light, visible only to those connected to it, and no one else. The wind brushed against every branch of every tree, tickling every bristle, and saying my name in a way only one who truly loves you could. It spoke to me in a language only we could understand, and I felt love beyond anything comprehensible in our human world. It wanted me back. It wanted me to show my commitment, and that's all I wanted too. But it also wanted something more. It wanted blood. I woke up not knowing how to feel. On the one hand, excitement filled my heart, as being embraced by the forest's tender consciousness was something I missed greatly. But on the other, its grave request was not to be taken lightly, and fear crept in where happiness should have resided. I didn't know what I was going to do, but all I could think about was where I could get blood. Later that week, we had chickens that needed to be slaughtered. Normally, I would wring their necks before hanging them upside down, and then cut their heads off to drain them. I still did that, but this time I put a bucket underneath them to collect the blood. After the chickens were drained, I hid the bucket in the barn, where my dad wouldn't find it. If he did, I'd get more than an interrogation. He'd beat me for hiding things. There was no way I could tell him why I had it either. If I did, he'd beat me even worse. Before supper, I snuck out to the barn. I grabbed the bucket of blood and brought it out to the tree line. A soft breeze blew gently against my back, corralling me lightly into the forest. I went up to the largest pine tree I saw and began to pour the warm chicken blood slowly down its trunk. The blood soaked into the tree like water into a sponge, and the forest exhaled a deep breath of relief. I heard my name, and I felt appreciated. I was back in the forest, and the forest was back in me. I did this as often as I could, and every time, I felt love in the wind as it grazed over my skin. I slept knowing that just outside my window, the whole forest and everything in it was thinking about me, waiting for me to give it exactly what it needed. We were so connected. It was like we knew each other's thoughts, each other's feelings. Such a privilege to never experience loneliness and to be in complete synchrony with something so much greater than yourself. This connection meant everything to me, but it also worried me because I could feel the forest's hunger grow. Soon, what I was giving wasn't enough. It wanted more. It wanted more now. In my sleep, the forest spoke to me. It said that the blood would no longer suffice. It wanted something alive to consume. It wanted fresh meat. I couldn't give it anything from the farm. My dad would notice. Honestly, I was surprised I'd gotten away with the blood for so long. I had to look somewhere else. At school, we had mice and frogs. There were 12 mice, and I figured I could take one without anyone noticing. So I did, and I brought it home secretly to give to the forest. In the tool shed next to the barn, I sought to kill the mouse first with a small spade, before feeding it to the trees. Right before I did, the wind blew softly and said one word. I walked toward the tree line with the still living mouse in my hand. I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen next, but the mouse trembled and shook in place, as if it did. Among the trees, I placed the mouse on the ground. It didn't run away. It just sat there, seemingly petrified. Just then, a group of small roots began to breach upward from the forest floor. They slowly encapsulated the small mouse and held it tightly to the ground. The mouse didn't fight. The mouse didn't move. It didn't even make a sound. From a small gap between the roots, its tiny little black eye stared up at me. And if the mouse could speak, it would ask me why. I did this again with 2 more mice and a frog. It was starting to get noticeable that there were animals missing. That's why one day, I decided to knock their cage over and grab as many mice as I could. If I made it look like an accident, no one could question the number of missing mice. So one day, right before school ended and we were about to go home, I knocked over the cage full of mice and stuffed 3 in my backpack before anyone could see what happened. My classmates screamed, and the teacher ran over to catch as many as she could to put back into the cage. "I'm sorry, Mrs. O'Connell," I said in a panic. "That's all right," she said. "Hurry up and go before you miss your bus." On the bus, I sat with the 3 mice in my bag, quietly squeaking and squealing as I held it close. 3 boys from my class sat a few seats behind me. They looked at me and talked quietly to themselves as they did. I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew they were talking about me. When I got off at my bus stop and started to walk home, I noticed they got off too and followed a short distance behind me. I got real nervous because I knew those boys lived a lot further down the road, and the only reason they got off just then was to follow me. The more I walked, the closer they got behind me. One of them said, "Hey Damien, what's in the bag?" I started walking faster. Another one said, "We saw you take the mice." And the third one threw a rock at me. I ran off down the road as fast as I could, hoping I could get to my house before they caught up to me. Within a few seconds, it was pretty clear that wasn't going to happen, so I darted off the road and into the trees. I sprinted aimlessly into the forest, and as I did, a gust of wind flowed up alongside me, like a great inhale from the forest itself. No words needed to be spoken for the forest to tell me I was safe here. As the boys chased closely behind, they threw more rocks and laughed, amused by my fear. I climbed up a steep rock ledge, and when I got to the top, I saw something that made my heart drop straight into my stomach. 2 gray wolves, with their teeth bared and growling, walked slowly toward me. I froze in place, certain that they were going to jump on me and rip me apart. But instead, they just walked right past me, as if I wasn't even there. As the three boys approached the rock ledge, laughing with stones in hand, the wolves peered over the top down at them, growling as they did. The boys below dropped their stones and screamed in terror before the wolves leapt off of the ledge and chased them in the other direction. Too scared to imagine what was going to happen next, I ran deeper into the woods and toward my house. When I got home, I stayed in my room for the rest of the day, staring out the window and into the tree line, terrified of what might be happening. As the sun set peacefully behind the tall ponderosas, a light breeze made its way from the forest through my window and said, The next day, school was canceled. The police said with wild wolves roaming the area, it was unsafe for kids to be unattended. Later in the day, the police made a visit to my house and asked what I was doing in the woods with the three other boys. At first, I said we were playing, but when the officer said one of the boys told him that they were chasing me on account of what they saw me do at school, I had to fess up about the mice. The look in my dad's eyes when I told that police officer I stole the mice was so angry, I knew I was going to get it later. I just said I didn't know why I took them. Then the officer asked if I saw the wolves, to which I said yes. He asked why the wolves didn't attack me, to which I replied, I don't know. Honestly, I did know. I just wasn't going to tell him that. Before he left, I asked what happened to the other boys. He said one was in critical condition at the hospital, and the other two were dead. Fear began creeping into my heart. First, for what the forest was capable of doing on my behalf, and second, for the strapping I was going to get from my dad. That one was bad. I couldn't sit down for 3 days after that night. This was around the time things started getting really terrible at home. My dad was drinking a lot. I mean, a lot more. And he was getting angrier. He didn't let me go into the forest anymore either. The only time I was allowed out of the house was to do chores. From the field around my house, and from my bedroom window, I gazed into the darkness beyond the tree line. It wanted me back. And it wanted something else. I just tried to ignore it. The beatings became more frequent, more violent. Over the simplest things, too, like bringing in a cracked egg or dropping a crumb of bread on the floor. The only time I could escape it was in my sleep. At night, I dreamt about being in the forest, running through the trees, letting the moonlight shine down on me as I lay on top of a big rock. But of course, I would wake up, and the nightmare would begin. Just because I couldn't go into the forest didn't mean I couldn't feel it. I knew its desires. I knew what it wanted. That's when it happened. The night it all happened. We were all at the dinner table. Me, my mom, and my dad. He sat there, red in the face, breathing fire. Everything was quiet. I was nervous, afraid, because it felt like something horrible was about to happen. I didn't know what, but something was coming. I reached over to get some butter for my corn, and as I brought it to my plate, my elbow knocked a fork off the table.
Damien!
My dad yelled.
Craig, enough!
My mom pleaded, his eyes fixated on her with the scorn of 1,000 demons. She stared back at him with fright in her soul, and they just looked at each other for a second. He hit her across the face as hard as he could, and my mom just fell to the floor and started sobbing. He pointed his finger sternly at me and said,
You're next.
Then he stomped around the table toward my mom and raised his hand again. Before he could do anything, I grabbed his bottle off the table and ran out the back door and into the pouring rain.
Damien!
I heard him shout from the back porch.
Get back here!
I ran as hard as I could, straight through the field and toward the tree line. He ran after me, and when I made it into the forest, I hid behind the biggest pine tree and waited.
Damien, get over here, you little shit! I'm gonna teach you some manners you're never gonna forget.
He trudged through the mud, looking for me. Then he saw the bottle, sitting on the roots of a tree in front of him. Goddamn little bastard. He picked up the bottle and took the cap off to take a swig. Just as he did, I crept up behind him with the axe he gifted me for Christmas that one year. As I raised it above my head, I felt my name engraved on the handle press up against my palm. He cocked his head back to let the whiskey slide into his mouth, and I struck down on it with everything I had. His body hit the ground, and I bashed my axe into his head again, and again, and again. I didn't want him anymore. I wanted the forest to have him, and keep him. After that, I went back into the house and told my mom everything I did. She hugged me and held me in my soaking wet clothes until the police showed up. I told them everything. Everything about the forest, the blood, the mice, the wolves, and my dad, laying dead just beyond the tree line. They took me away that night. I was only 14, so they brought me here. And here is where I've been ever since. I'm 31 now, I think. I don't know. It's hard to keep track of time. I have to eat these yellow and orange pills. I don't like the way they make me feel, but those are the rules. It's not so bad here. The nurses are nice. I get to go outside once a day. And from my bedroom window, I have a very nice view of the forest. It doesn't talk to me anymore, though. When the wind blows, I just hear the breeze. But sometimes, I wonder if, just if, somewhere in the wind, in the pine bristles, in the branches, in the trees, if the forest is calling my name. I don't know. I probably never will.
Part 1. The Man. Autumn was his favorite time of year. He loved the smell of cinnamon and apple cider, the sensation of cool, fresh air on the skin, as well as the sound of crisp and brittle leaves tickling the ground below them. Alan Maynard loved it all, especially Halloween. He liked knowing that scary movies would be played on TV, that people would be dressed up in ridiculous costumes, and that spooky happenings would be commonplace. It wasn't that Alan was a morbid or dark person. He just didn't like surprises. He took comfort in knowing what to expect. Alan was a simple man. He lived by himself and had a small handful of friends. He enjoyed reading books, watching movies, and playing video games. He tended to take interest in things he could do alone, Usually men his age enjoyed going out on weekends, socializing, dating, and things of that nature. But not Alan. The prospect of being in undesirable situations and dealing with the unexpected was enough to keep him at home, in his comfort zone. However, this October would be a stressful one for Alan, as his comfort zone would have to change. He was moving to a new house. The owner of his current home, Alan's landlord, was selling it to a couple who would be moving in before the new year. An event Alan had no control over, therefore made him very upset and anxious. Alan himself knew he had a peculiar psychological condition. Although undiagnosed, Alan suspected he had some form of OCD, or acute anxiety. Surprises and uncertainty frightened him greatly, and he did everything he could to avoid them. Fortunately for Alan, he found a new place to live. One he deemed better, because it was bigger and closer to the accounting firm where he worked. The new route he would take to his office would involve roads with less traffic, which was a breath of fresh air to a man like Alan. Still, the prospect of moving all his things from one place to another proved stressful enough that Alan couldn't concentrate on anything else. He worried day and night about all the things that could go wrong. The movers breaking or misplacing his belongings, not being able to find a suitable location for items like his aquarium, along with any unforeseen kinks or elements of the new house. The troublesome fear that bubbled inside Alan was exacerbated by this unwanted situation. And although Alan knew this ancient fear would never completely go away, he had to do his best to keep it under control. Part 2. The Move. The big day finally came, and Alan organized all his things into specifically labeled boxes for the movers. And they started with the big things like furniture and his TV, which were placed gently in the truck without being damaged. This was a huge relief for Alan, as one of the more stressful parts of the move was over. The movers went on to bring out box upon box of Alan's other things, like his books, clothes, and electronics, until finally, all that was left were his boxes of fragile belongings. When Alan saw one of the movers pick up the box containing his aquarium, his heart sank. Alan walked briskly to the mover and reminded him to be careful with that box, to which the mover said he would, and assured Alan not to worry. But Alan did worry. He always did worry. When they arrived at the house, the movers brought everything inside and did not forget or misplace anything. Alan could now breathe, knowing the hardest part of the day was over. Now it was time to unpack and make his new home, his new safe zone. Alan walked around the house and inspected it once again. The first time he was shown the house, Alan didn't find anything of concern. But this time, a few things immediately stuck out. Small gaps in the molding made his mind jump immediately to what pests might be able to slip through them. Ants, roaches, spiders, mice. All kinds of unwanted visitors could potentially make their way into his home. Alan decided to fill up the gaps with caulk and place mouse traps anywhere he could to prevent them from getting in the walls. The next type of unwanted visitor Alan had to prepare for was that of the humankind. He checked the locks on all of the doors, which seemed sturdy and functional. But the windows, to his dissatisfaction, were functional, but not sturdy. Most of them locked loosely, and someone with the right equipment could stick something through the gap and unlock the window from the outside. This would simply not suffice, and he would have to get the windows replaced as soon as possible. The final source of concern came in the form of a ceiling hatch on the second floor. This hatch was a small square in the ceiling of the hallway. When pushed lightly, the square board would detach from the ceiling frame, revealing an opening to a small attic crawl space. This small space was lined with wood beams supporting the roof. It had no windows and contained nothing. Alan had no reason to fear this attic crawl space, seeing as there was nothing inside. But the idea of an unsecure opening leading to the hallway outside his bedroom unsettled Alan to a terrifying degree. Alan decided to implement a makeshift alarm system for the ceiling hatch by tying a small bell to a string and placing the string between the hatchway frame and the hatch board. This way, if the board was tampered with anyhow, the bell would ring. And if the board was removed, the bell would fall to the floor. This would have to do for now, as Alan needed to finish unpacking his things downstairs. After arranging the furniture, setting up the TV, and putting away his books, clothes, and other belongings, it was time to move on to the fragile items. Alan was relieved to find all his plates and glasses intact. But when he unboxed the aquarium, his fear and anxiety was confirmed. Across the front panel of the tank was a large crack that ran from the bottom left to the top right corner. Alan knew for a fact that the crack was not there when he packed the aquarium. When could this have happened, Alan thought? When the mover was handling the box? On the ride over? Did they break it on purpose for a laugh? Alan's mind was spinning out of control with all the possibilities. His heart raced at an uncontrollable tempo, until he finally decided to throw the aquarium out and get a new one. He feared this event may be a bad omen for his life in the new house, but only time would tell if Alan would be able to settle in properly and keep his everlasting fear at bay. Part 3. The House. The first few days in the new house were rough for Alan. He checked the walls incessantly for gaps, cracks, and openings to fill. He listened intently for any signs of life within them, and did everything possible to eliminate any unwanted pests in the house. He sprayed every room with Raid. He littered the basement with mouse traps, and put a few behind the fridge and in the pantry. Alan could not properly relax until he was confident there were no critters in the house. The first few nights were sleepless for Alan as well, knowing the windows were not properly equipped to keep out the most skilled of home invaders haunted him, and the possibility of hearing that bell in the dead of the night was nearly enough to drive him mad. For that sound was the thing that Alan dreaded most. Among the insects, vermin, burglars, and psychopathic intruders was an answer, or mode of protection. But for the thing most likely to ring that bell, a supernatural entity, there was no proper response or manner of prevention. Alan would be at the mercy of whatever was before him, with no control or influence over his fate. After the weekend, some contractors came to the house and replaced the windows. The sturdy, airtight seal of the locks gave Alan intense comfort. In the following weeks, Alan experienced no evidence of rodent, or insect infestation in the house. His anxiety toward the dreaded creepy crawlies living alongside him began to disappear. And as the months went by, Alan heard nothing from the bell attached to the ceiling hatch in the hallway. His mind started to ease about the likelihood of the house being haunted. And the more time passed, the less it seemed Alan would ever have to hear that silly little bell. Before long, 2 years had passed since Alan moved in. His time in the house had gone without incident, and thus became his beloved comfort zone. His commute to work was much more enjoyable, and returning to a place where he could truly relax after a long day at the office was something Alan cherished greatly. He had the occasional friends over to play board games on the weekend, but other than that, life continued as usual for Alan, and his mind was at ease. Part 4. The Night. Another Saturday night came to a close, as Alan saw his 2 friends out the front door. He watched from the window as they got into their cars and drove off. It was a very pleasant night, which saw Alan win 2 out of the 3 board games they played. Alan wasn't quite tired enough to go to bed, so he decided to crack another beer and watch TV. There was a Friday the 13th marathon playing in honor of the Halloween season, and Alan watched on as Jason easily slaughtered a handful of helpless teens. His eyes began to feel heavy as he slowly dozed off to the shrieks and screams of Jason's poor victims. Alan was suddenly awakened by a loud noise and bright light from the TV. He saw that it was a completely different Friday the 13th movie on the screen, and the time on his cell phone read 3:06. Alan thought it best to move over to the bedroom, so he turned off the TV and went upstairs. In bed, Alan found it difficult to fall asleep right away. Every time he started to drift away, a loud gust of wind would startle him from outside. It was an unusually windy night, and the howls outside sounded like distant voices, crooning and calling some unknown name. Alan's body began to tense as the sounds from outside began to stimulate his mind. Just when he thought it ridiculous to be feeling this way, a tapping sound presented itself from the window. Fear struck Alan's chest, as he never heard this noise from any of the windows before. Could it be a branch, he thought? No. The tree in the backyard was too far away. Perhaps a bird. No, it was a bit too quiet. Almost like a person fiddling with the window while trying to be discreet. So an intruder then. But this was the second floor. As the thoughts raced away through Alan's head, another noise entered the room. A faint scratching, coming from inside the walls. Alan's heart started beating at an uncontrollable rate. What started as a couple of noises with hypothetical explanations had now changed into a presence Alan could feel. The scratching was not random or sporadic like the other noises. It was coming from a living, thinking creature. Alan's ears were heating up, and beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. He couldn't believe what was happening. Why now? And just then... No. It couldn't be. That dreaded little bell. This was the first and only time Alan had ever heard the bell in his house. All of the safety and security Alan felt from his home was shattered in an instant. What could have moved the bell? A draft from outside? Something in the ceiling? Perhaps a cat or some animal moving around in the attic. Or worse, a human intruder looking to do Alan harm. Alan had a loaded revolver in his bedside table. And in that moment, he decided if the bedroom door opened, he would have to pull it on whoever, or whatever, was on the other side. This was all too much for Alan, as the sounds and stimulants began to intensify. The howling wind outside grew more aggressive, as did the tapping on the window. The scratching in the walls moved closer, and was right next to Alan's ear. He pulled the covers tightly over his head, and clenched his eyes shut. Again, that bell. This was no coincidence. Something was terribly wrong, and there was nothing Alan could do. Paralyzed with fear, Alan dare not move, or attempt to take control of the situation. All he could do was wait, and reach for his gun if something entered the room. But what if the intruder was not one to be affected by mortal weapons? What if it viewed Alan as the intruder? The possibilities brought crippling fright. He lay in bed for the rest of the night, sweating profusely and white-knuckling the covers. After hours and hours of terror and internal crisis, the wind died down and the sun began to shine. The morning had come, and Alan had survived the night. Part 5. The morning. At some point, Alan gathered the courage to finally get out of bed and inspect the house. He felt confident there were no burglars about, and much less fearful in the light of day. He started with the window, and pulled it up to stick his head outside. The autumn air was surprisingly cold, and when he looked to the right, he saw the branch of the tree unusually close to the window. With his eyes, Alan followed the branch to where it met the trunk, and saw a split where the two were attached, allowing the leafless branch to lean closer to the window. Alan reached out with his hand. When he pulled the branch closer, it touched the window above his head and recreated the tapping noise he heard the night before. Alan exhaled a sigh of relief as the tapping sound from the window was explained. Now to investigate the scratching inside the walls. Alan walked out of the bedroom and down the stairs without looking down the hall. He checked the mouse traps in the kitchen and the pantry to find nothing. Moving down into the basement, he found 2 dead mice in the traps he had set by the furnace. These were new mice, and a small hole in the ceiling revealed how they and their friends may have gotten into the walls. The temperature outside had dropped a considerable amount, and it made sense for small outdoor animals to be seeking refuge this time of year. This conclusion was good enough for Alan as to what was making the scratching noise. Currents of calm and relaxation ran through him, for his findings shed much-needed light on the events of the past night. Alan began to believe his fear was irrational, and that his wild thoughts were just a product of an overactive imagination. The tension in his body eased, knowing each occurrence had a logical explanation. The only thing left to explain was the bell on the attic hatchway. Positive that the bell in the hallway was tickled by draft, or moved by some other obvious force, Alan walked casually up the stairs. When he turned the corner to peer down the hallway, shock and dismay met him quickly. With eyes wide and mouth ajar at the sight before him, Alan discovered the tiny bell laying on the hallway floor. He looked up to see its purpose for being there. And indeed, the force that moved the bell was obvious. Sitting in the hatchway frame, where the board was supposed to be, was nothing. Just an empty, gaping hole leading directly into the attic. A perfect square of black in Alan's imperfect home. Infinite darkness confronted Alan through a little black box in his ceiling, making him feel completely vulnerable and naked where he stood. The currents of calm which ran through Alan's body soon converged into a vortex of anguish. Unsure of what to do or how to act, he began searching timidly for the hatchway board. It was not anywhere to be found. Not in the hallway, not in any of the rooms, not even in the attic itself. Alan was at a loss. He could not say for sure how or why the board was completely missing, whether it be by some kind of wild animal, human intruder, or even by the hand of a spectral being. All he could say for sure was that it was something in the house.
In the scenic Welsh countryside lived a humble sheep farmer by the name of Nathan Price. The Price family farm where he grew up was his treasured home. It was all he loved and all he knew. Before Nathan, it was ran by his father, and before him, his grandfather, and before him, his great-grandfather, and so on for more generations than Nathan cared to know. Sheep farming was in his blood. He was made for it, so farm sheep he did. Nathan always loved this kind of work, along with life on the farm, but not as much these days as he did before. Nathan had come upon harsh times. Within a year of losing his parents to old age, his wife had developed a very aggressive form of cancer, which sadly took her life much more quickly than the doctors or anyone could have anticipated. Without any children, Nathan was now at the farm alone, and at the ripe age of 40, he was no spring chicken. Where do I go from here? Nathan asked himself. It had only been about 8 months since his wife passed away, and with the wound still fresh, finding a new partner was out of the question. Still, loneliness resided in Nathan's heart, and that emptiness is what hurt the most. And then there was the issue of the farm itself. Without an heir to the throne, who would the farm belong to when Nathan's time on Earth was all said and done? With the present so painful and the future uncertain, Nathan felt trapped in a plane of misery. He went about his business as usual. Jobs needed to be done, as farm work is never put on hold, no matter the circumstances. The Price family farm was not a small one. With just over 200 sheep in the flock, Nathan was always busy. During lambing season, he required the help of a few local boys, and with the next lambing season just around the corner, Nathan hoped for a prosperous one. The Price family farm sat on 350 acres of land, with neighbors on either side. To one side was the Williams family farm. They were a very successful family of dairy farmers, whose plot sat on some 500 acres. George, the head of the Williams family household, and Nathan's childhood friend, ran the farm and its respective businesses like a well-oiled machine. Nathan always respected George's ingenuity and perceptiveness. On the other side lived a much more peculiar family, the Joneses. Their plot of land sat on roughly 200 acres and had been in their family for even more generations than the Williams or Price family farms. However, the Joneses' land was unused. They farmed nothing, with fields overgrown and property completely unkempt. Secrecy shrouded their family and estate, as they kept to themselves and socialized with no one. Nathan had interacted with Mari Jones, the eldest daughter, a handful of times in the past. Now the family matriarch, she looked after her younger siblings. How many she had, Nathan wasn't sure, and didn't even know if her parents were still alive or not. The last time he saw Mari was about 9 years ago. A break in his fence allowed some of the sheep to escape. From Nathan's field they left, and into the Joneses' field they wandered, munching happily on the tall grass of their plot. It wasn't long before Nathan heard Mari screaming and yelling at the sheep to return from which they came. Nathan ran out toward the fence as soon as he heard all the commotion.
Get out! Get out, you dirty animals!
Oh, goodness, Mary, I'm sorry for this. I truly am.
Sorry like hell you are. Look at them filthy little things. Get them back on your property right now.
I said I'm sorry, Mary. It's not like I want them to come over here. The fence is broke is all.
Well, I don't care. Just get them back over on your side and get the fence fixed. I don't like these dirty little things chomping away at my family.
Yeah, I'll fix it.
So taken aback by her last statement, Nathan didn't even want to ask. Clearly mentally disturbed, he'd rather just steer clear and not see her again. So that's what he did, and that was the last time he saw Mari Jones, or any of the Joneses for that matter, 9 years ago. Not a single incident took place since then, at least not with the sheep. 9 years was a long time, but it felt like a different life. Back then, both of Nathan's parents were still in the house, along with his beautiful and loving wife. Now it was just him. Just him. With the days growing longer and the nights growing darker, the gaping sorrow in Nathan's heart became less and less bearable. He didn't know what it would take to get his life back on track. Not that he wanted to forget about his family. He just wanted to move on and not live in so much pain. A single ray of hope shone through on one gorgeous spring evening as the golden country sun set and Nathan had a chat with his old friend George, the dairy farmer.
Any pandering for you, Nathan?
Go on then. Why not?
How you holding up over there?
Truth be told, not so good, Georgie.
I know. It's hard.
I don't want to just move ahead, like nothing ever happened, or get a new wife so I don't have to be alone. But how do I not think about everything I lost when it's everywhere I look?
I don't know, pal. I really don't. But you have to. You have to fix your mind on something else, otherwise...
Fix my mind on what, though?
Anything. A new hobby?
Oh, yeah. Nothing a game of checkers can't fix, eh?
Oh, shut up, you bastard. You know what I mean.
I wish I did.
What about the farm?
What about it?
Well, for as long as it's been in your family, it's never changed.
What does a farm like mine need changing for? It's always given us everything we needed. No more, no less.
Well, maybe you should have more. Grow it. Build it up. Make some more money.
Nah, George. I'm not like you. I'm not a businessman.
So what? Why not become one? It'll get your mind off of things.
Nah, it's just not a good idea.
It is a good idea. Really, Nathan. You can put your mind on something else for a while, and when you're ready to share your home again, they'll be flocking to you, Mr. Moneybags.
I don't know how they put up with you.
I'll give you a little insider information to start. The Joneses next door to you are gonna have to sell 100 acres.
What? Why would they do something like that?
Property taxes. They haven't paid them in forever. My friend at the council says they owe so much money, if they don't sell half, they could lose it all.
Really?
Now I know you got some savings, Nathan. You could buy it up, expand your farm. And if you need help with the business side of things, I'm always here for you.
That could be a good idea, Georgie.
Nathan had to admit to himself that the idea was quite appealing.
For the first time in a long time, he felt excited about something. Motivated to begin a new venture, George and Nathan sat and drank slowly as the sun went down, toasting to the possibilities of a promising future. In the following months, Nathan made arrangements to purchase 125 acres of the Joneses' property. This land bordering his would allow Nathan to aggressively upscale his operation and require him to make some pretty big changes. He installed high-quality perimeter fencing around all of his land, built new sheds and shelter accommodations for lambing and the large increase of flock. Nathan even built a hefty underground storage bunker to house feed and medical supplies for his beloved sheep. The Joneses watched in horror from the edge of their property as large mowing tractors cut the overgrown grass of the land they once owned. Nathan oversaw the grooming of his new fields, carried out by a group of local boys hired to cut the grass and install the new fence. Oddly, one of the tractor mowers ran into something which stopped it in its tracks. The sudden impact almost knocked the driver out of his seat, and when he went to inspect what he hit, was puzzled with what he found. It was brought to Nathan's attention that a small stone object had blocked the mower's path and needed to be moved. When Nathan examined the object, he found it to be about 2 feet in height and made from almost perfectly rectangular stones. These stones were very heavy for their size and had strange geometrical carvings etched into them. Nathan stared intensely at these kaleidoscopic shapes and found that the harder he looked, the more they resembled faces. Interrupted by the bang of another tractor mower, it became clear that the field was littered with these tiny stone structures. Infuriated with this hindrance, Nathan had the field swept to locate and remove them before the mowing could continue. In the midst of the stone's removal, Mari Jones made her way into the field to have a word with Nathan.
You shouldn't move those, you know.
What in God's name are these?
If you had any sense, you wouldn't move them.
Mary, I'm running a farm here. I have to move them so I can cut the grass and build a fence. You want my sheep coming over to your side again?
You're already on my side.
I don't care. I'm moving them.
You'll pay the price. You and your stupid animals.
Nathan and his team uncovered over 40 small stone pyramids, disassembled them, and dumped all of the stones back onto the Joneses' property. Although distraught by this odd discovery, Nathan did his best to forget it and move on with his plans. Over the next few weeks, moving on is exactly what Nathan did. He cut the grass, built the fence, and grew his herd. He sat down one evening after a long day of work and enjoyed a cold lager. He thought about the recent changes he had made to the farm, how they were going to make him more money, and all the work that still needed to be done. It was all a bit stressful, but at the same time, quite comforting. For once, Nathan focused on something other than his empty home and the loneliness saturating it. He could finally entertain his thoughts with something else, and the idea of a wealthy future was intoxicating. The biggest thing on his mind at the moment was the upcoming lambing season. With so many pregnant ewes ready to give birth, Nathan needed to hire a few extra hands to help out. It was clear that the days to come would be busy, but Nathan was prepared for them and welcomed anything that provided distraction from sorrow. With the recent land acquisition and increase of flock, they were expecting upward to 300 new lambs over the next 6 weeks. As was tradition, Nathan took a shot of whiskey just before assisting with the first birth of this hopefully favorable season. He was reminded of the small sips of whiskey he took as a child with his father and grandfather right before the first ewe of the year gave birth. Sad to be the only one carrying on tradition, he quickly poured himself another and threw it back. While assisting the year's first birth, Nathan said gleefully,
"All right, boys, here's to a busy season."
And as he pulled out the tiny lamb, a putrid stench hit him ruthlessly in the face. Nathan coughed, and a lifeless lamb body fell abruptly onto the barn floor. It lay there, wet
and motionless as Nathan and the others looked on at the brutal sight. In an attempt to lighten the moment, Nathan said,
"Well, can't win them all."
And the others awkwardly dispersed to attend the other ewes. This terrible showing continued all through the night, with one stillborn lamb after another being pulled out until the sun came up. Nathan could not believe what he had witnessed. He had never seen anything like it. Not one living lamb was birthed that night, and this unprecedented event shook Nathan to his core. The remainder of this lambing season continued to be a disaster. Although not a complete loss, the overall yield was terrible to say the least. What was expected to be an increase of a few hundred only turned out to be about 50. One pregnant ewe remained, and Nathan went to assist the birth with no expectations in mind. He used his hand to fish out the unborn lamb, and when he took hold of its front legs, started to pull. The newborn lamb came out and fell straight to the floor. Seemingly lifeless, Nathan considered it dead and went to fetch a sack to put the body in. Just as he got up, the tiny lamb began to move and slowly stood firm on its slender legs.
What the hell?
He had never seen anything like it before. Newborn lambs are never able to stand up immediately after being born. But somehow, this one was doing just that. The blood-soaked lamb stared directly at Nathan, locked onto his eyes, as if knowing who he was. The feeling accompanying this gaze was uncanny in the eeriest sense, and Nathan felt intense discomfort as he made an exit from the barn. The eyes of this blood-covered lamb followed him all the way to the door. With this devastating lambing season behind him, Nathan made plans on how to recoup his losses going forward. He decided to rent out some of the land he had purchased from the Joneses to short-term letters for their farming purposes. He also thought of new ways to make money from his remaining flock. What once seemed like a path to a brighter future was now a road to recovery. Not ideal for a man who was already recovering in more ways than one. This major setback put sorrow back into Nathan's head and reminded him of the harsh and unforgiving nature of life. He found himself drinking and watching TV most nights because it made him feel like he did before the house was empty. Absent-mindedly staring at the screen, something caught Nathan's eye, or rather, someone. A woman on screen was being interviewed by a local reporter. Her name was Miss Davies, and she was an elementary school teacher. Her beauty was beyond captivating to Nathan, and her silky brown hair fell perfectly on her shoulders, just as his wife's once did. Her mouth moved slowly as she spoke, and Nathan watched her talk unceaselessly, even though he did not understand a word she said. Before he knew it, the interview was over, and Miss Davies was gone. Floored by this experience and her uncanny likeness to his late wife, Nathan felt a short moment of peace from Miss Davies' presence. Immediately following that night, the farm began to adopt a strange presence. The sheep didn't act like their usual selves, and at first, Nathan didn't know why. The sheep clustered in small groups whenever around each other, and barely made any noise. Even during feeding time, when they were usually at their loudest, silence filled the sheds and barns. Whenever Nathan entered a room, they would stiffen up and stare at him suspiciously, as if they were being held hostage, but not knowing by who. This bizarre behavior put Nathan on edge, but not as much as the last lamb of the season. Now at 4 days old, he stood in the middle of his pen, looking into the walkway of the shed. The rest of the ewes and their baby lambs stood petrified in their pens, glaring at him without interruption. Even his mother cowered in the corner, eyes wide and bloodshot, fixated on him, with bloody bite marks on her udders. When Nathan stepped into the room, none of the ewes or lambs paid him any attention, except for the one they were all clearly afraid of. Nathan didn't know why,
But when he looked at the 4-day-old lamb, the name Aiden pressed forcefully into his mind. Aiden stepped toward the gate and looked studiously at Nathan from a distance. Once again, Nathan slowly backed out of the shed, feeling uncomfortable. That night, Nathan scanned all of the local channels vigorously to find Miss Davies. At first, he had no luck, but soon enough, he stumbled upon the segment from the previous night. With a clearer head, he watched and gathered that she was spearheading a fundraiser for Ukrainian refugees. Again, Nathan found himself in awe of her appearance. He couldn't help but think of his wife. He re-watched the segment and its variations every night until the local channels stopped airing them. Nathan was saddened when the segment stopped, almost as if his wife was leaving him again. He made a conscious effort not to obsess over her like a silly little schoolboy, so he left the TV alone and didn't come back to it. Work and life continued on the farm, just as it always had. Even after the unbelievably horrific lambing season, there was no shortage of work. Nathan was up at the crack of dawn, doing his jobs, tending his flock. Still, all of the sheep appeared on edge and terribly frightened of something. That something was little Aiden the lamb. He stood in his pen and always kept eyes on Nathan when he entered the shed. Aiden's mother now lay in the corner, staring blankly at the ground, breathing irregularly and seemingly traumatized. Her udders were beyond swollen and bloody from feeding her baby. All use imprint on their offspring. But this wasn't imprinting. This was something else. Not only did this little lamb chew his mother to bits, it also seemed that he had been mating with her, and quite viciously as well. Young rams have been known to impregnate their mothers before, but at 5 weeks old, this was something Nathan had never seen or heard of before. He looked at the exhausted, quivering ewe laying in the pen, her blank stare more understandable than it was a moment ago. Nathan decided to get Aiden out of there and put him with the other sheep in the larger barn next door. So he opened the pen and let Aiden outside. Right away, the others in the barn became quiet and were immediately receptive to Aiden's presence. Nathan left the barn and closed the door behind him, feeling as if maybe he had just made a big mistake. He then went into the house to retrieve his shotgun and put the dying mother ewe out of her misery. This was the harsh reality of life on the farm. Things lived and they died. He aimed the barrel at the poor dying ewe and pulled the trigger without thinking twice. When Nathan pulled her lifeless body from the pen to bring outside, he noticed something. In the corner of the pen, under the dead ewe, was a rigid, square stone. Upon further inspection, it resembled one of the stones in the field, one of the stones Mari said not to touch. When Nathan picked it up and looked even closer, he concluded that it was. He stomped furiously out of the barn and directly to the Jones residence, with stone in hand.
What the hell is this? You think this is funny?
You big, stupid man. I told you not to move him.
This isn't a joke, Mary. I know what you did,
I
but...
never did anything. It was you that moved him, and now you have to deal with it.
Deal with what?
The curse.
The curse? The curse? You're out of your mind.
Back at home, Nathan sat and drank whiskey. The image of Miss Davies entered his mind, and warm feelings flooded his body. He had to see her one more time, so he opened his computer and tried his hardest to remember the name of her fundraiser website. After several tries, he finally got it, and on the team page of welshrefuge.co.uk, there she was. Marissa Davies, the answer to all of his sadness. In a drunken gesture, Nathan wrote a letter to the organization and praised Miss Davies' work on the Ukrainian refugee project.
He then enclosed the letter in an envelope with 50 pounds before falling asleep on the couch. The sun slowly rose, as did Nathan from his sofa. He arrived at the barn to find all of his sheep huddled in the back, away from little Aiden. The tiny lamb directed its attention toward Nathan, and unease set in once again. Not sure what to do with this tiny monstrosity, Nathan thought it best to separate him from the other sheep. So he led Aiden away again, this time to a separate shed where he would be all alone. Stood in the middle of the room, he watched Nathan exit, completely aware of his effect on the man. Time went on and things slowly returned to normal. Not really to normal, but enough for Nathan to feel better about it. During the days, he would work hard and make strides towards getting his farm back on track. In the evenings, he would drink whiskey and periodically visit the Welsh Refuge website to lay eyes on Miss Davies. He knew this behavior was strange, but Nathan couldn't help himself. Lust overpowered loneliness as he gazed at her fondly. What he would give to have a woman like that. Things around the farm eased up ever since Nathan moved Aiden to the shed. The other sheep were able to relax with little Aiden out of sight. The only thing was, little Aiden wasn't so little anymore. Now almost 4 months old, he was ready to become a breeding ram. Nathan thought it time to move him over with the other breeding rams. So what if he was a bit frightening for a barnyard animal? He couldn't live in this tiny shed forever. Nathan opened the shed door to find Aiden knelt on the ground, facing away from the door. This was the first time ever that when Nathan entered, Aiden wasn't staring directly at him with piercing black eyes. He closed the door loudly behind himself to alert Aiden, but still, there was no response. As Nathan creeped closer, he saw that Aiden had his head close to the ground and was eating something. It was only when Nathan came right alongside him could he see what it was. In Aiden's mouth was a squishy, red substance, which Nathan could immediately tell were the entrails of a small animal. Under his hooves was a half-eaten carcass of a baby field rabbit. Appalled by this discovery, Nathan jetted out of the shed and slammed the door behind him. He stood with his back against the door, breathing heavily. Never before had he ever seen a sheep eat another animal, perhaps a mouse or a frog hidden by the length of the tall grass, but never purposefully like he just witnessed. It was at this point Nathan understood. There was something seriously wrong with Aiden. At night, Nathan continued to drink, more than he ever had in the past. With no one in the house to tell him otherwise, he carried on, drowning himself in liquor. The long days and stress of his financial endeavor weighed heavy on Nathan's mind. In combination with the crippling loneliness, his descent into darkness was as promised as the setting of the sun. Booze helped, and so did cyberstalking Miss Davies. Nathan had explored every facet of her digital footprint, and even created a Facebook page to keep up with her in real time. He knew this obsession was growing into an unhealthy one, but Nathan couldn't help himself. The days, weeks, and months slowly melded together. Nathan continued his work on the farm, but was not mentally present. He seldom knew what day it was, barely talked to anyone, and found himself taking sips of whiskey during the day. Some days, even the hours would meld together, and Nathan would be unsure if the sun was going down or coming up. On one such day, Nathan found himself inside his kitchen, staring at a half-empty bottle of Penderin as the dim sunlight shone through the window. Puzzled as to whether it was a good time to pour himself a drink or not, distant rolls of thunder called from beyond the horizon. Nathan grabbed the bottle, just as raindrops could be heard sprinkling against the window. He poured the whiskey into a glass, and the rain fell harder. Right as he put the glass to his lips and went to cock his head back, something slammed against the window. Startled by the size and force of this object, Nathan went to investigate. Another impact against the window. Nathan looked outside and
couldn't believe his eyes. Rats. Large, gray, filthy rats, falling from the sky and squabbling hurriedly in the mud. He heard them pushing up against his door, trying to get in. The rain poured down furiously now, forcing all the animals outside to seek shelter. Nathan had not a clue of how to deal with this situation, so he went back to the kitchen counter and downed his glass, before praying to keep the rats out of his house. When Nathan woke up the next morning, his prayer had been answered. Although his house was safe, the same could not be said for the barns and sheds housing his sheep. Just outside the front door and all over the fields were rats who had drowned in the muddy downpour. In the main barns and sheds, hundreds still sheltered themselves alongside Nathan's sheep. Many of the sheep had sustained scratches and bite marks on their legs from being in such confined spaces with the rodents all night. Immediately, Nathan anticipated many of his sheep would become infected and die from this event. In Aiden's shed, there were absolutely no rats, as he was seemingly unaffected by this event. Just as Nathan thought, many of his sheep succumbed to infection and died in the following weeks. Nathan had lost about a third of his flock in this unbelievable event, and right when things seemed to be turning around for him. To add even more concern to the pot, Nathan turned on the TV one evening to see a disturbing news report. A 32-year-old Marissa Davies had been reported missing. For the last 5 days, friends and family had been unable to reach her, and now the local authorities were getting involved in finding her whereabouts. Nathan felt extreme worry for her well-being and sympathy for the many family members and colleagues on screen who were pleading for her safe return. Although the situation was shocking, Nathan felt confident that wherever she was, no one would wish to hurt her, as she was too precious to harm. With his back against the wall and nowhere to turn, Nathan sought advice from his old friend George.
Can you believe it, Nathan? First it starts raining rats, then a woman goes missing.
As much as Nathan wanted to be present in this conversation, he simply could not. His mind was split in too many places. Time and events were all mishmashed into a crock of gloom and fear. Nathan found himself having trouble knowing where one bad thing ended and another began.
Hey, pal, are you listening to me?
George then suggested to Nathan that he should induce another lambing season to get the numbers up. Nathan agreed with this idea and prepared to do just that. The very next day, he prepared the ewes for mating by putting them in separate fields of 40 or so. He then released a single ram into each field, in the hopes that he would impregnate as many ewes as possible. The behavior of the sheep was as expected, with each field taking to its respective ram as normal. But not Aiden's field. Nathan emerged from his bunker to find the ewes in Aiden's field actively avoiding him. This puzzled Nathan, but also didn't surprise him. What was so inherently wrong with this particular animal? He had no idea why Aiden was the way he was, but without doubt, something was wrong. Desperate for a fruitful lambing season, Nathan resorted to a different method for Aiden. He put Aiden back in his shed and brought the ewes one by one to him. Without even seeing Aiden, the ewes instinctively knew not to go in the shed, as they fought against Nathan, who had to forcefully drag them in there against their will. The sounds which could be heard from the shed by each ewe alone with Aiden were horrific in every sense. Upon release, they couldn't get out of there fast enough, while Aiden stood in the middle of the room, seemingly pleased with himself. He looked at Nathan as if to say, "That's right, give me another one." After 6 ewes, Nathan decided it was enough and decided to spare the rest. The traumatized look on that last one was a bit too much, and Nathan felt regretful for even putting those 6 through, whatever the hell that was. Nathan watched Aiden from the shed door as he strutted around carelessly. "I'm gonna sell you," Nathan thought to himself. Right at that moment, Aiden's neck cocked, and turned his head right at Nathan. His piercing glare cut into Nathan like a knife. It said, "Don't you dare. You'll be sorry if you do." This made Nathan angry. Aiden would be gone as soon as he got the chance. That sheep's vile presence would no longer be tolerated here. While the sun set and Nathan poured himself a glass of whiskey, the TV continued reports of the missing Marissa Davies. The story had gone past local news outlets and was now on the national news circuit. Everyone was astonished by the woman's disappearance from a place where no one ever disappeared. Nathan almost believed it to be untrue himself and tuned in every night to hear the case developments unfold as they happened. In the beginning, they considered all possibilities: runaway, accident, abduction, murder. But soon, they whittled the options down to foul play and stated that she was likely abducted. The detectives on the case thought this because Miss Davies had plans on the evening of her disappearance, plans that she never showed up for. With abduction as the likely cause of her absence, Nathan's heart sank. During this time, Nathan secured a buyer for a breeding ram in Aden. After a few days of trying, a local buyer came forth and agreed to purchase Aiden and pick him up the following week. Relief flooded Nathan's chest as he would finally rid himself of the frightening creature. In the days leading up to Aiden's departure, Nathan sensed a malicious energy radiating from his shed. He didn't need to see Aiden to know it was coming from him. He could just feel it. One day, Nathan had himself a large pile of lumber he intended to turn into wood mulch for lamb bedding. He rented a very big wood chipper and fed the long stalks of lumber into it, forming a tall pile of wood chips. Halfway through the pile, an extreme thirst came over Nathan, and he had an unwavering urge to go inside and crack open an ice-cold lager. So that's exactly what he did. The cool air from the fridge brushed against Nathan's skin, and the crisp, frosty lager slid down his throat, creating a euphoric sensation, releasing him from the heat of the sun. Just as Nathan was at his most relaxed, he heard a noise that caused sudden concern, a mechanical malfunction of some kind, which made Nathan realize he had left the wood chipper on. In a panic, he looked out the window, only to lay eyes on something far more horrific than a mechanical malfunction. Sometime between when Nathan left the wood chipper and arrived at the kitchen, the gate to the ram shed had somehow been opened. Instead of running off into the fields or wandering to some other part of the farm, they seemed to have lined up in an orderly fashion and begun walking in a single file line toward the wood chipper. Before Nathan could put down his beer, the first ram in the line stepped up to the wood chipper and without hesitation, jumped right in. Nathan burst through the door and ran toward the rams to stop them, but one by one, they jumped and were spat out onto the other side, contributing bloody bits to the great big pile of mulch by the chipper. Nathan was able to wrangle 2 rams and bring them safely back to the shed, knowing for certain that if he didn't, they would have jumped in too. He walked back to the bloody wood chipper, stunned by the event that just took place. Blood covered the mouth of the machine, and next to it, a large pile of wood mulch covered in bloody flesh, bones, and wool. This act of insanity by the rams was too anomalous to have been a mere fluke. This act was intentional. This act was influenced. Nathan looked at Aiden's shed and knew he was in there. He opened the door to find Aiden waiting for him, mocking him with his presence. Nathan slammed the door and stomped back to his house. He couldn't wait to sell off Aiden. He couldn't wait to be free of that disgusting thing. Nathan took a large gulp of whiskey from his glass and immediately poured another one. How dare that Aiden do whatever he wants here? How dare he destroy my farm? Nathan turned on the TV and gulped again. Why does that demonic thing want to hurt everyone and ruin everything? He likes giving others pain. He likes making things suffer, Nathan thought. The TV now showed the Miss Davies investigation, with her picture on screen. The picture they always used made her look so happy and pretty. Whenever Nathan saw it, he almost forgot that she was missing. He sipped slowly and watched the report. The investigation was getting more precise. They even had a window of time and a potential area where she had been abducted. Nathan's focus shifted back to Aiden. 2 days. Just 2 more days and he would be gone. But what else could Aiden do in 2 days? Kill more sheep? Destroy the property? 2 days seemed like a long time. Long enough to make Nathan regret waiting. The report on TV went on to explain that the abductor was most likely a stranger, but probably someone from the local area. With another huge gulp, Nathan thought, no, tonight. He has to go tonight. He went straight to the bedroom closet and pulled out his double-barreled shotgun. Enough damage had been done. Aiden would have to go now. Nathan opened the door to Aiden's shed and found him waiting patiently there. He looked up at Nathan without fear. Nathan raised the shotgun up at Aiden and stared down the barrel right at his head. With his finger on the trigger, ready to pull, Nathan breathed a sigh of relief. Aiden's head jerked and his neck stiffened. Nathan lowered the gun, unsure of what just happened. Legs buckling, they cracked and straightened. Slowly, Aiden's body began to lift up, and almost miraculously, he began to stand on his hind legs. Nathan fired the gun, but it had no effect on the contorting animal. Aiden was now standing completely upright, with his head pointed up toward the ceiling. He then let out a howling noise which sounded not of this world. At this point, Nathan stood frozen, with eyes and mouth completely agape. Aiden's mouth started to stretch open, not as if he was opening it, but as if something was pulling it apart from the inside. Bloody humanoid fingers slowly emerged from the ram's mouth and pushed the opening apart until the ram's entire head ripped into 2 separate pieces. A blood-red skull with horn-like studs proceeded to surface from the expanding gash as the ram's body was now being ripped in half. Nathan dare not stay in the shed with this unholy being, so he ran out and into the field, hoping to get as far away as possible. He could feel the presence of this fiendish monster close behind him. Nathan heard wings flapping and the warm breath of death creeping slowly around his neck. Through his own field and into his letter's cornfield he ran. Nathan saw no escape from the situation, but kept running as if he might have a chance. He tripped and fell face first into the dirt. As he searched for his shotgun, the hellish creature chasing him landed and slowly approached Nathan on foot. Nathan turned around to find the gigantic bleeding ghoul standing directly over him. It had to have been about 10 feet tall and could only be described as a spiteful, raging blood demon. It reached its hand into the dirt right next to Nathan's body and pulled out a ridged square stone from the ground. It lifted the stone high up in the air and prepared to bash it into Nathan's head. Nathan closed his eyes and accepted his fate. In that moment, he did not feel fear, but peace. He finally let go of all the sadness in his heart, all the pain in his life. He welcomed death with open arms, and death welcomed him too. Nathan was found the next day by the farmer renting Nathan's land. While harvesting corn, he stumbled across Nathan's body and immediately called the police. Upon investigation, the clear cause of Nathan's death was fatal gunshot wound to the head. Further autopsy reported that this injury was self-inflicted. This was by far the least disturbing thing discovered about Nathan's final days on the farm. When his home was searched, it appeared he had been drinking copious amounts of alcohol. The living condition of his home had fallen into squalor. Dozens of sheep were found dead on his property due to neglect and malnourishment, including one which had been locked up in its own shed and shot with the same gun Nathan used on himself. Review of his CCTV footage even revealed Nathan unlocking the gate to the shed housing his rams and carrying them out one by one to throw into a wood chipper. Perhaps the most disturbing finding of all lay in Nathan's underground storage bunker. For chained to a wall and on the verge of death was one Marissa Davies, who had been missing for weeks.
I can't believe how long it's been since I've been in a place like this, was the first thought John had as he walked into the cabin. The warm, cozy feel of this quaint little structure was exactly what he needed to enjoy the New England winter. The perfect getaway for him and Emma, his beloved girlfriend of 3 years. They dropped their snow-covered bags on the floor and had a look around. Cast iron pans hung above the kitchen sink, and paintings of natural landscapes adorned the walls of the living area. A large red sofa sat in the middle of the room, facing the fireplace, and there wasn't a TV in sight. The cabin felt lived in and welcoming. For 3 short nights and 4 long days, it was all theirs, and it was just what they needed. "All that's missing is a bearskin rug," John said to Emma, as she chuckled silently while shaking her head. John walked up the stairs and into the bedroom. It housed a beautiful king-size bed, which looked out toward a small balcony. Just beyond the balcony was a tall oak tree, which stood at eye level with the second floor. Many of the tree's large branches had either been pruned or cut off, as not to come in contact with the balcony. John took in a deep breath of fresh mountain air and felt at peace. That night, John and Emma ate dinner by candlelight with a bottle of wine. They talked and laughed, feeling so happy to be away from their stressful lives in the city. The next few days would be a welcomed escape from reality.
"Let's go on that trail the woman told us about,"
said Emma. "Yeah, let's go," replied John. The two set out on the hiking trail near the cabin and began walking up the mountain. Powdery white snow dusted the trail and everything around them. Serene beauty eased their minds, and for a moment, everything was perfect. At the peak of the mountain, John and Emma looked out over the gorgeous landscape and the small town that lay in the bottom of the valley.
"I'm gonna see what's over here. I'll be right back."
John continued to look out at the view for a few more minutes. Then, he felt a presence approach him from behind. "That was quick," he said, before cutting himself off abruptly. For when he turned his head, Emma was nowhere to be seen, although the presence still lingered. John looked around to try and determine where this presence was coming from, but he could not identify it. He felt as if someone was looking at him, but not just at him, in him. This feeling intensified to the point that John got frightened and was frozen in place. Whatever was watching him saw everything. His greatest dreams, his darkest fears. It peered directly into his soul, and it was not human.
"John?"
said Emma, as she put her hand on his shoulder. John jolted in shock, unaware Emma was right next to him.
"Are you okay?"
she asked concernedly.
You've just been staring into the trees for ages.
Yeah, I'm fine. Just thought I saw something. Emmett took his hand and walked back down the trail with him. This odd gesture worried her, because John wasn't one to get lost in thought, or distracted by things that didn't matter. The look on his face as he gazed into the tree line held a sense of distress, as if the source of this emotion was personal, or meant purely for him. They walked back to the cabin, and John loaded wood into the fireplace. As the fire crackled away and Emma stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, John noticed a red velvet guest book sitting on the living room desk. He opened it to reveal pages upon pages of comments left by previous visitors. All were positive and cheery in nature, with some accompanied by a small Polaroid picture taken with the camera which sat next to the book. The first one John read said, "We had an awesome time here in the cabin. Linda was super helpful and told us about all the best spots and trails. Great stay. Todd and Emily." John flipped through a few pages and read another one. "What a beautiful cabin surrounded by beautiful landscapes. For hikers, the Pennacook Main Trail and Big Owl Trail are a must. A perfect winter getaway. Dan and Jessica." John then flipped all the way to the end of the comments and read the last one. "This has been such an amazing weekend so far, and we love the cabin. We hiked the North Peak Trail today, and we'll check out Big Owl tomorrow. Can't wait. Zach and Tara." Next to the writing was a picture of a young couple in their 20s, both wrapped up in cozy winter clothes and smiling brightly. The man wore a big fuzzy Ushanka hat, and the woman was wearing a fleece headband that covered her ears. The headband had a goofy pink and yellow polka dot pattern, and both of their noses were red and glowing, as if they had just stepped inside. John looked fondly at the picture and flipped through the last few pages in the book, which were blank, all except for the very last page, which had something scribbled in the top right corner. John squinted his eyes and looked closely. It said, "If it sees you, you will die." John's heart stopped as he contemplated the meaning of this cryptic message.
John, dinner's ready,
Emma yelled from the other room. John put on a brave face and walked into the kitchen, still shaken by what he just read. He then opened a bottle of wine, poured Emma a glass, and proceeded to eat dinner as if nothing was wrong. That night in bed, John lay awake for hours, thinking about what was written in the book. Who would write something like that? And why? He also couldn't help but think about the eerie sensation he felt earlier that day on the trail. That undeniable feeling of being watched and examined by something not of this world. Just then, John heard the flip of a metal switch and saw light coming through the sliding balcony doors. It was the automatic light above the back door. It was set off by something and lit up the entire backyard. The light shone heavily on the oak tree just beyond the balcony, and from the bed where John lay, he could see every twig, branch, nook, and crevice the tree had to offer. It made John feel extremely uncomfortable to see every part of the tree so well, as if he were the one completely exposed, even though he lay in total darkness. The light shut off and everything was dark again. John was relieved to not have to see anything outside. But when he looked through the sliding doors, he saw something else quite peculiar. 2 round lights off in the distance, too far away to be distinct, but close enough to be observable. These 2 lights bore an uncanny resemblance to eyes, and the longer John looked, the more obvious they became. The eyes blinked once, and John froze. paralyzed by fear. Not because there was something out there, but because that something was looking right at him. John shut his eyes to escape the glare of this unknown creature, but simply ignoring it could not release him. He began to hear distant murmurs, not through his ears, but in his mind. The creature called out from afar, through inaudible whispers too faint to comprehend. Although John could not understand what it was saying, he knew in his heart that the telepathic messages were meant for him. He did not know why the creature spoke to him, but understood that it knew everything and had seen the very depths of his soul. Morning came without notice, and John awoke suddenly to an empty bed. He felt as if he had endured a feverish dream and couldn't remember drifting off the night before. He went downstairs to find Emma making pancakes and coffee, happy as can be, and without a single worry. Her vacation had not been interrupted, and John didn't want to be the one to do it.
Good morning. How did you sleep, my darling?
Good.
Well, you better eat up and get ready for the day. We have a long hike ahead of us.
Oh yeah? Which trail do you want to hike?
Let's do the Big Owl Trail.
The two set off after breakfast and began their excursion. Still uneasy from the night before, and that ominous message in the guest book, John put his feelings aside and went along with the plan. He convinced himself that there was nothing to worry about, and that he had worked himself up for no reason. On the trail, he felt much more at ease, much more calm, and much less anxious. At the trail peak, John and Emma embraced over another stellar view of the valley, as the quaint little town sat quietly below them. "I love you so much," John said to Emma.
I love you too,
she replied. John smiled warmly at her and breathed in the cool winter air. Just then, right behind her head, something caught his eye. Hanging high up in a tree, on a branch much too tall to reach, was a piece of pink cloth. Something about it felt familiar to John, as if he had seen it before. He slowly started walking toward the tree.
Where are you going?
Said Emma, but John didn't reply. He just kept walking until he was at the foot of the tree. He raised his arm up and pointed at the object. "You see that?" John said.
Yeah? What about it?
"I think that belongs to the girl in the picture."
What picture?
In the guest book, there was a girl wearing that on her head. Pink and yellow polka dots.
That doesn't make any sense.
I know, but where else could it have come from? It's too similar to the picture.
Well, then how do you suppose it got up there?
I have no idea. But there's something really weird about this place.
What do you mean?
Ever since we got here, I feel like I'm being watched.
That's ridiculous. There's no one else out here.
I can just feel it. There was also some weird stuff written in the guest book, and now that girl's headband is up in the tree.
John, I think you're overthinking it. Look, we just have one more night at the cabin. Let's just enjoy ourselves, and we can always head back early tomorrow.
Emma wrapped her arms around John and hugged him tightly. John calmed down and said, "Okay, fine." And the two walked off hand in hand down the mountain. That evening, during dinner, John tried his best to relax and enjoy their last night in the cabin. But the looming question still fogged his brain, as fear and concern shrouded his heart. In bed, he tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep, and wanting nothing more than for the night to be over, so they could pack up their things and drive back home. Right as he was about to give up on sleep and go downstairs for a drink, he felt it. The presence. Gripped by fear, John dare not move from his place in bed. It was coming from outside, and it was much closer than before. John slowly opened one eye and looked out the sliding doors. The eyes, again, staring right at him, and much, much bigger than before. A voice entered John's head and spoke clearly, without confusion.
I see you.
Fear turned into panic, as John had no idea how to react to this direct contact. He replied in his mind, unsure if this entity would hear him. "What do you want?"
I want to take you away.
"Why me?"
Because you came into my home.
"What do you want from me?"
Your soul.
The light switched on and lit up the tree outside. John looked. What he saw sent him into a state of primal terror. His body tensed, and pure fright made him shiver uncontrollably. Emma awoke to this, looked outside, and did the same. Perched on a large branch, and gripping tightly to the trunk of the tree, was a huge creature that resembled a human. Except it wasn't human at all. It was something completely different. Massive talons clung fiercely into the branch, attached to long legs like that of a man, bent at the knee and covered in brown fur. These legs went into a broad, muscular body, with one arm wrapped around the back of the tree, and the other holding on to the side. Deep scratches dug into the trunk, where it met the creature's claw-like hands, and long feathers tapered off of its arms to form wings like a prehistoric bird. There was no neck where its shoulders met the head, just a short, wide protrusion housing two glowing yellow eyes and a blood-red beak. Its head, a godlike owl, sat completely still, as if frozen in time. In this moment, the couple learned that they had never felt true fear before, as it coursed heavily through their veins. With one giant leap, the creature went from the tree to their balcony and perched itself on the railing. The lock on the sliding door opened slowly by itself, and the door slid open, letting in the cold winter air. The creature stepped down from the railing and walked gently into the room. John and Emma were now upright in the bed, paralyzed with horror. Emma opened up her mouth to let out a scream, but nothing came out. And the last thing each saw was an outstretched claw covering their faces before being whisked away in the dead of night. All left was the sliding door curtain, flapping inside the room by the cold night wind, with emptiness filling the air. In due time, the warm sun slowly arose to reveal another beautiful winter day. A dark green Jeep Grand Cherokee made its way up the secluded gravel road and pulled up next to the vacant cabin, parking next to John and Emma's car. A woman in her mid-50s stepped out of the Jeep and approached the cabin, entering through the front door with her own key and without knocking. She took notice of John and Emma's bags, neatly packed up in the center of the living room, and began humming Walk Like a Man, her favorite show tune from her favorite Broadway play, Jersey Boys. She then ascended the stairs into the bedroom, where the sliding door remained wide open, and the curtain fluttered gently in the breeze. She shut the door and pulled the curtains aside. Picking up 2 massive feathers from the floor, she tossed them into the center of the bed and began taking the blood-stained pillowcases off of the pillows. She put everything in the middle of the sheet and wrapped it all up in one big bundle. Now she was humming Big Girls Don't Cry and walking down the stairs with the bloody bundle of bed sheets. She brought them outside and put them into the trunk of her Jeep, and went back inside to get John and Emma's bags to put in the trunk of their car. The woman then made a quick phone call to her husband and told him to come and pick up the Jeep from the cabin. After that, she meandered over to the guest book and picked up the pen. Amazing weekend here at the cabin thanks to Linda being such a superb host. All the trails are amazing, and Big Owl is a must for all you nature lovers. Wonderful stay. John and Emma. She closed the guest book and walked out the front door, got into John and Emma's car, and drove away.
I write to you, from far away, to confess my love, but not to stay. For it is you who made me feel the warmth of life, that love is real. My words are humble, but so am I. I'm unremarkable, a passerby. My mind is old, though I am young. This is the reason I can't hold my tongue. Day and night, I work so hard, from building site to lumber yard. I labor till the light is gone. My bones are sore. My name is John. My life is simple. I cannot lie. The point of it, I wonder why. That is until I got a clue, a glimpse of beauty, the sight of you. I recall the day. How could I not? The breeze was cool, though the sun was hot. At the gates, I saw you there, with eyes of hazel and auburn hair. You lightly laughed, you heartily smiled, inviting me to watch you a while. So watch I did until you departed, which left me feeling quite broken-hearted. I then went home, all on my own, to cook, eat, and sleep alone. The day was done, and the past behind, but still you lingered inside my mind. How could it be? What have I missed? To have never felt a love like this. What could I say? What should I do to help you feel this deep love too? I chose right then and made it my task to lead you toward this love you'd unmask. Then sleep I did in my cold bed, with plans for you to one day wed. Again I encountered you, my love, as if sent down by God above. You ended your day, and so did I. I followed you home, simply to spy. Of this I am ashamed to say, but it is the truth, what I did that day. I couldn't resist. I had to know more. So I watched you come home and close the front door. Outside I was, and outside I stayed. In the darkness of night, I sat and I prayed for just one more look, a frivolous glance, and God answered my call by some marvelous chance. You appeared in the window, flooded with light. I held back the tears with all of my might. You looked in the mirror, drying your hair. I cried in the bushes, watching you there. At that moment I knew I had to declare the love I was feeling, how none could compare. So a gift I would leave you the very next day, on your doorstep to find a present displayed. Early at sunrise, I acted with haste to give you your gift without time to waste. I left it right there, in front of your house, gutted and bloody, a gray little mouse. I giddily waited for you to depart, to stumble across my small piece of art. But right as you did, I felt quite surprised when I saw your pale face, the look in your eyes. Admiration was not what you felt, but a different feeling for the gift you were dealt. My heart was as if a knife had been thrust, for the look on your face was that of disgust. You eagerly fled, to class I presume, as I spent the day shrouded in gloom. Why didn't you smile at my little gesture? I needed your praise, for this I felt pressure. It soon became clear that it wasn't enough. A wee little mouse couldn't be up to snuff. You just needed more, and I'd make sure you'd have it, which is why by your door I left you a rabbit. Fresh and bloody, with stains on the floor, a sight to behold you couldn't ignore. It indeed was a present, and just so you'd know, I made sure its ears were tied in a bow. I waited with glee to see your reaction, but oddly enough, to my dissatisfaction, for this present I left, you didn't feel keen. When you saw it right there, you let out a scream. The guilt that I carried for causing you fright stayed with me intensely, all day and all night. To make you feel fear was not my intention, so began my response, my act of redemption. I only did wish to make you feel safe, to be understood, in my heart have a place, where you never need worry. I'd kill for you, dear. I wished you to know this, though my methods are queer. I soon realized that these gestures were shocking, that you acted of panic, you never were mocking. The message I sent was so misconstrued, but my love for you surges, it can't be subdued. A man who can kill can put you in danger, especially one you don't know like a stranger. That's why my third gift will come at a price, not one of death, but of sacrifice. I finally see how you need to be charmed. I know love is bold, but don't be alarmed. At home I prepared it, to you, from me, though that night I lay there in agony. The following day I worked at a pace, slower than usual, but waiting with grace. I then saw you leaving, outside of the hall. I followed you home, and watched by the wall. The gift I had placed inside of a box, with a note I had tucked in one of my socks. I laid on the ground and waited all night, watching your window, hoping for light. Alas, you appeared, to view your reflection, and when morning arrived, you'd feel my affection. I watched you so close, and dreamed of our life. Surely tomorrow, I'd make you my wife. The sun then came up, at morning's first light. I set the small box in a place just right, so that when you stepped outside of the door, you'd see it there perfectly laid on the floor. And right as you left, that's just what you did. Finding my note attached to the lid, you opened it up to read what was on, containing 4 words from your admirer, John. You opened the box to see the inside, and as you did so, my heart filled with pride, for now you would know the pain of the sender. I present you the severed tip of my member. In that moment, I thought I should no longer hide, but before I could stand, you ran back inside. At a loss, I pondered, why is she so meek? But soon at your house arrived the police. I could not understand why you felt so afraid. By the strength of my love, I was truly betrayed. So I sit in my home, thinking how I was wrong, to scare off the one that I loved all along. I've concluded by now, there is no other way. There's no reason to live, no purpose to stay. With these words I bid you a final goodbye, and although you don't love me, I gave it a try. From your admirer.
These were the words printed on an A4 sheet of paper in Mrs. Henley's hands. She trembled, shaking the document like a frail leaf in the cool autumn breeze. She then grabbed her freshly poured glass of wine and finished it all in one go. Unsure of what to do with this poem, Miss Henley placed it back on the table and reached for another in the pile beside it. As much as she hated grading papers on the weekend, encountering something like this could have never been anticipated, and her feelings of annoyance were replaced with dread. The next day held more of the same. Awful and sickening feelings churning in the pit of her stomach. Although it was a happy day, spent with family and children laughing in the park, Mr. Henley could sense the horrid vibrations emitting from his wife. "Are you all right, darling? You seem to have gone quiet." She just shook her head and claimed to be fine, a claim her husband immediately knew to be false. In bed, Mrs. Henley stared fearfully at the window, thinking intensely about the poems handed in by her Year 8 class. The assignment was to write a rhyming poem that would scare her. The more impactful, the higher the grade. By those standards, that particular poem deserved an A+. But this poem was more than impactful. It was insightful. More confusing than the poem itself was the student who handed it in, Ryan Camplin. Ryan was an incredibly underwhelming student. Not stupid, but completely void of motivation. The idea of him putting effort into anything academic was foreign in every conceivable facet. As soon as Mrs. Henley read the first line, she knew he didn't write it. And although it was her duty to report such plagiarism, it was also her desire to confront him. The next day at school, Mrs. Henley handed back all of the Halloween poems. All but Ryan's. The bell rang, and as the class got up to leave, Mrs. Henley called Ryan over to her desk. She asked simply,
Ryan, who wrote your Halloween poem?
"I did, miss," Ryan pleaded.
Ryan, I know you didn't write it. Tell me right now who wrote it, and you won't get into trouble.
Fine. Ryan proceeded to pull out his phone and show Mrs. Henley the chat log on his AI application. It appeared that the AI had written the entire poem, and in typical Ryan fashion, he didn't even change a single word. When asked if he knew what a member was, it became clear that he didn't even read it either. True to her word, Mrs. Henley didn't report Ryan and simply told him to write a new poem using his own words this time. Although the question had been answered as to who wrote the alarming poem, the mystery didn't end there. In fact, more questions had been brought to the forefront. The AI in Ryan's phone had truly written every word that made its way onto Mrs. Henley's desk. But how did it know to write those things? Years ago, when Mrs. Henley was just Mary, she studied at university in London. For a brief amount of time, she received a series of eerie findings on the front porch of the house she lived in during second year. At first, she believed them to be the wild prey of some neighborhood animals. But as time went on, the things left there became more sinister and intricate. One differing detail from the poem was that it mentioned a total of 3 gifts left by the psychotic admirer, when in Mary's experience, it was something like 20. It started with small animals, and sometimes insects, arranged into purposeful patterns or formations. Then, after a while, the animals got bigger, and were sometimes strung out along sticks, as if to resemble a picture in a frame. Mary knew that these morbid gifts were surely intended for her, and the final straw came in the form of a small green box one day sitting on her doorstep. Attached was a note reading, "From your admirer." Inside was a bloody piece of flesh that she couldn't properly identify. Not knowing what it was, and not wanting to find out, Mary left university abruptly without giving administration a proper reason. She transferred to another university closer to home and looked over her shoulder for many years after that. In time, she slowly got her life back and learned to live like a normal person without much worry. That is, until this ominous poem made its way across her desk. The prompt Ryan used to generate this poem was, "Write me a over 1,000-word poem that rhymes and scares the shit out of my teacher, Miss Henley." How this AI knew the past events of Mrs. Henley's life, she did not know. Because another differing detail from the poem was that she called the police after receiving the admirer's final gift, when in reality, she did not. Mrs. Henley, Mary, did not tell a single soul about any of the events she experienced during that time. Everything that happened stayed between her and her admirer.
The storm raged on, and from within the house, an old man sat quiet and waiting. For what? He did not know. For how long? He did not care. But he waited patiently, because tonight was the night it would all happen, and he knew it from the very depths of his soul. He took a sip of whiskey from the lowball glass which sat next to his armchair. The wind blew stronger. The rain fell harder, and the thunder echoed a name which must not be spoken aloud. But the old man heard it and knew it to be true. The radio flickered on.
1 1 0 6 4 0.
He recognized those numbers, but could not remember from where.
6 4.
Thunder struck again, and lightning illuminated the wall of framed pictures which he wished wasn't there. The first picture of him and his late wife, whom life without, was a painful reminder of the happiness that only existed in memory. The second picture was that of his son in military uniform. Now a grown man, he lived in a country far away, with no intention of returning. The third picture portrayed his daughter as a little girl. Now a woman with a family of her own. She had no time for the old man, ironically, with time being his only companion. He took another sip. Lightning flashed again, and he felt a presence from outside. For the first time in decades, he felt noticed. He felt seen. Looking out the window, across the street, and into seemingly endless rows of corn, the old man could make out a faintly figure. At first unsure of what he was seeing, doubt became absolved at the sight of a long scythe which glimmered in the moonlight. The old man now knew what he waited for, as fear crept in and replaced solace from his thoughts. More wind, more rain, more whiskey from the glass upon his lips. The door opened slowly, and footsteps made their way through the house. Midnight fell upon this fateful night, and the old man prepared to stare death in the face. The reaper's scythe dragged across the hardwood floor, louder and louder, making its way closer to the old man. One last gulp from the lowball glass, and the footsteps stopped. But not just the footsteps. The clock, the radio, the wind, the rain. The night itself came to a sudden yet peaceful halt. Death took one step closer, and stood at the doorway of the living room. Unable to open his eyes, the old man sat shaking, overwhelmed by the thought of gazing upon the last thing he would ever see. But it was time. Slowly opening his eyes toward the floor, his sight approached the doorway, where a pair of muddy boots stood firmly. Next to the boots was a bloody scythe blade, dripping fresh blood onto the floor. The old man looked at the figure in the doorway and stared in unwavering confusion, for the figure before him was not an unworldly being or a ghoulish specter of any kind. It was a man, and not just any man, but one he knew. Further down the road lived another farmer, although troubled in the mind, never gave anyone problems. He now stood in the doorway, and the old man said, "Why are you here?" And the farmer replied, "Because it's your time."
The latest on the investigation and reaction from the family.
We believe we have recovered the murder weapon being a scythe, which is it's a hand tool used to cut tall grass or weeds.
Because of the heinous nature of the crime, the prosecuting attorney asked for a